So like we said before, we go into these jobs, we can't go out there with that's the way it was before, guys. Airflow has become more and more critical as the SEER rating has changed, as the technology has changed. We don't have the variances in the equipment that we used to have 20 years ago, 30 years ago, okay? So you're going to find out some more information that we give through here, that everything has become much, much tighter window, okay? Because if you go out there and you see this ductwork in a system, you know, typically we've talked about 400 CFM per ton for years, right? What are we talking about today's equipment? Anybody know? 350. It's kind of what we're looking at, okay? Sensible and latent temperatures have drastically changed. We used to be at 75 sensible, 25 latent heat removal. Now we're lucky if we're at 85, 15, okay? Coil temperatures used to be at 40 degrees. Now we're at 48, 40, 45, 48 degree coil temperatures, and they're slowing that air down to get those temperatures down, okay? So we can have some of that latent heat removal. And if we have ductwork out here like this, that we just leave in a home, come summertime and those slower air going across there and that colder temperature air, it's going to rain in the attic, okay? I had a job. I took this picture. I had a job that I went on, and they could not get it to cool the house. And when I first got up there, you're not going to get any static out of that at all. You're not going to get any air movement at all. So we really need to watch this on the front end. And I say for our contractors who do a lot of residential and stuff like that, your guys that are doing maintenance, they're going to be your first lines of defense, because they're going out to Miss Mary's home for 10 years telling her the system is 15 years old now. It's getting older, so she might need to think about replacing it at some point, right? But ever once did we mention the ductwork? Probably not, okay? Because just like your insulation in your home, you know, they tell you after 30 years or so, 20, 30 years, that insulation settles. The R value is not what it used to be when it was put in brand new, right? That's the same way with this. That R value might have been R2 or R4 30 years ago, and now it's R nothing. You know, it's R nothing. And that's what you see with a lot of people do change outs. That old wrapped insulation, it looks good, but the R value is just not there anymore. So our agenda today, we're going to look at our equipment, our components, indoor components. We're going to look at troubleshooting the inverter boards themselves. EcoNet. How many of y'all know about the EcoNet thermostat? Have ever used one? Anybody? Some of you? Contractors? No? Yes? Some of you? Okay. With the 15 and 16 SEER equipment, you have the option of using the regular 24-volt stat like we have on the wall over here, or the EcoNet communicating stat. Hopefully, by the end of this session today, I will have convinced you to use the EcoNet stat, okay? Even for the people that love, what stat do they love the most out there? Come on, you said it, that Nest. I've already had 2 calls on this equipment with a Nest thermostat. One of them was in Mississippi, and the contractor said, the lady, this is a gas system, claims that her outdoor condenser fan motor was running. Was that you?
I had it happen to me Monday.
Gas system was running when the heat was on inside. I said, what? I said, yeah. She says the fan motor runs real slow when the heat's on inside.
Sure does.
Somehow or another, that Nest thermostat was sending 12 volts outside because it's a brushless DC motor. Okay? So it was sending 12 volts outside through that board somehow and bringing on that condenser fan motor. Hopefully we can convince you to use our EcoNet. We're going to talk about installation. We're going to talk about tools today. You see I have some up here, okay? I'm not in particular to one brand, but we're going to talk about we need to move out of the analog era, okay? And we're going to talk about some reasons why we need to do that, all right? We're going to take a look at our contractor app. I have a short video for our contractor. This is a great app, guys. Once you get into this thing and learn the ins and outs of it, it can provide you a ton of information. okay? Especially if we have a contractor login. And if you don't have one, you can have one by the end of the day within 5 minutes, okay? It doesn't take long to sign up for it, okay? It's free and doesn't cost you anything, all right? And the reason why they want you to have a login, the guest features, if you don't ever create a login, you can still work on this equipment. But we're going to show you what the guest features are and what the login features are in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about navigation, Bluetooth setup. Our 15, 16, and 18 SEER equipment is all Bluetooth compatible, okay? Meaning, if you have this app, you can access everything to troubleshoot it and work on it through your phone. There's no more memory cards. There's no more dip switches. One board for the outdoor units will service the 15, 16, and the 18 SEERs. One board for the RH2VZ air handlers will service all of those air handlers. One board for the furnaces will service all of the furnaces. One board for the RH3VZ air handlers will service all of the air handlers. You don't have to have separate boards. You don't have to have separate memory cards, because if we change it, we're going to program it with the information that we need. Via Bluetooth, you don't have to have an internet connection. So when I say Bluetooth, don't confuse that with an internet connection. Just you have to be near the piece of equipment, okay? We're going to show you about that. We're going to show you setting up, diagnostics, HVAC repairs. We can offer financing and everything through this app, verify warranty lookups, and access all available product documents, okay? Some of this just requires Bluetooth. Some of it requires internet connection and that Ruud contractor login, okay? We're going to view real-time equipment sensor information. So that's kind of a yes and no, okay? So anytime you work on this equipment, if you're working on it, troubleshooting it, you want to connect your gauges, and you can also lose the system status feature in your phone to connect to it. I'm going to show you what information you can get off of it. But you may look at it and look on your phone and it says, well, I got 125 pound suction, but my gauges says I have 115. So there's about a 15 to 30 second lag where the phone updates. So it's not continuous. Whereas you're watching your gauges up and down, there's about a 15 to 30 second lag in there when it says real time. So, on your phone, if you know how you can swipe down to refresh the screen on the phone, if you want that up-to-date information, you'll have to pull it down just to do that. So they're supposed to be working on that to make it more real time instead of, because it gets kind of confusing when you got different pressures on two of them. But it's still great. It gives you a lot of great information. If you ever get out to a job site and you haven't downloaded the contractor app for whatever reason, or you changed your phone, there's a QR code on the side of it. You can download the app and have the app with you. You need an internet connection. If you have the login, this is where you're going to log in. If you have a My Ruud account, that's your username and password already. So if you already have a My Ruud account, you don't have to worry about registering for anything. It's the same password, okay? So if you get in here and you don't have a My Ruud account, it's going to have a link right here. It says visit My Ruud for more information. You click on here, it'll bring you to this page, okay? If you click on here and it says request new contractor account, do not click there. If you put your information there, it will go into a black hole and never be heard from again, okay? They're supposed to be doing away. This doesn't work anymore with this link, okay? You want to click on request new user account, okay? Just takes name, address. It's going to know what branch you work out of, that you get your stuff from, and what company you're with. And then down at the very bottom of it, it's going to ask you for an AC PIN number. That AC PIN number you're going to get from Tim, from the branch. He's going to go into your account and get you that AC PIN number. You put that in, you hit submit, you get an email back where you have access automatically. Okay? And I'm going to show you what you get with the guest features in just a second and what you get with the login features. Trust me, you're going to want the login feature. Okay? The home screen, you can change it to where you can have your picture up here. If you're logged in, it's going to say your name up here. So that's how you'll know that you're logged in. It'll actually have your name up there. Okay? You can change it. You can look. We got John McClain up here. Log in and out, navigate account settings. So account settings. Some guys say, well, we have such a. Can I just share my account with my guys? You can. I wouldn't recommend it. Because now, if they share the main account with your other workers, they have access to all of your account information. Otherwise, if they log in with that AC PIN number and create their own, they can have access to the Ruud contractor stuff, but they don't have access to your direct account information.
And only one can log in at a time.
And only one can log in at a time. And only one can log in one piece. One can log in on the condensing unit, and one can log in on the air handler. But only one person on one piece of equipment at a time, no matter what. Okay. Come in here, you can set it up for Face ID and Touch ID if you want to. You can take a photo of yourself and put it in there so you can look at yourself every time you open up the app. So these are our guest features. Look at our guest features and look at our user login features here. Big difference, isn't it? Okay. There's a lot of great information. I get a lot of times say, hey, does this piece of equipment match? Well, if you have this, you can go in here and look up your AHRI lookup yourself and know if you have a matched piece of equipment. Okay. Rapid Spec, Design Star, edit your profile, Face and Touch ID, real support, parts lookup. You can look up parts. HVAC EcoNet technician. We're going to talk about that extensively, why you need that access so you don't have to wait on me. Okay. Diagnostics. It's going to tell you alert codes, alarm codes that you can go into. It's going to tell you, okay, this thermistor, blah, 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 is the alarm. If you just have the guest login, that's all it's going to tell you. If you have the Ruud login, then it's going to go further and tell you what possibly could be causing that alarm, how to fix it, how to troubleshoot it, and what to do to replace it. Okay? So in our installer part of this app here, this is what you need to install it. All of these tabs are Bluetooth. Now, there's been some updates out already. One of the main things I want to say about this contractor app, when you get it on your phone, make it go have automatic updates. They have updates come out every night, possibly. And if you don't have the latest and greatest update, I've had contractors go out to air handlers to reprogram air handler boards, and they say, Mike, I've done what you told me 3 times, and it's still doing the same thing. Well, what update do you have to the app? Well, I got the 3.1. So you need to update the app. Once they updated the app and then reprogram the board, everything worked fine. So this is how we don't have to have dip switches and we don't have to have memory cards, but we do have to have the latest app update in case there's any updates that have come out overnight that we're not aware of. Okay, so set it to automatic updates. Also, too, you will see in the little corner up here they've got little Bluetooth symbols that let you know these are Bluetooth only. When you get down here, you have to have an internet connection. Okay? So it's not all Bluetooth, but the parts you need to work on it and diagnose it to help you are Bluetooth. Everything else requires an internet connection. You've got warranty lookup, tech support, HVAC technician, retailer lookup, distributor information here in the service tabs, system status, diagnostics. In the sale column here, you have AHRI lookup, talk about rebates, Protection Plus, retailer lookup, Design Star, Rapid Spec. You have access to all of that. All of that, though, is you have to have an internet connection. And all of that requires a Ruud contractor login. Okay? The guest features will not give you access to all of that. Okay? So take the few minutes, fill it out. If you have problems, get with Tim, but get that AC PIN number for your account, and he'll get you fixed up. So on our install, we got our Bluetooth setup here. Okay? So on this particular one, they're installing an outdoor unit. So you would connect to it, find you want to set up your outdoor unit here. You would select it, and then the serial number to that unit would come up. This particular one has 2 serial numbers. We want to make sure we're connecting to the right serial number. You could be standing at Mr. Jones' house where you're putting in a new system, and a month earlier you put one in at Miss Smith's house. Okay? So you're this close, you could be connecting to both. This could be a 5-ton and this could be a 3-ton. I had this same situation happen. We had a 2-ton and a 4-ton side by side. The 4-ton was acting funky. I went out there. When I pulled this up, I had 2 serial numbers here, but they were the same serial number. Somehow the contractor had downloaded the 2-ton information into the 4-ton drive. and it was not working correctly. So we want to make sure that we select the right serial number on the piece of equipment that we're working with, okay? It's a little work. It's really simple, guys. So we just got to make sure that we're choosing the right thing and it works great, okay? If you have an EcoNet, okay, you're going to get this to come up. It says EcoNet thermostat found. Use the EcoNet thermostat to finish system setup. You don't need to use the contractor app to set the equipment up if you have an EcoNet, okay? So this is one spot that I tell you, this is why you want an EcoNet. The EcoNet sees everything, it recognizes everything, and it'll set it all up for you. It'll also tell you, I had this the other day, contractor got there, he had a 16 SEER, hooked everything up, turned it on, it come up and it said, mismatched equipment. He was putting in a 16 SEER heat pump with an RH2VZ air handler. It's not a match. And it threw up a code. This was mismatched equipment. Now, we did make the snafu and gave him the wrong air handler. He needed the RH3VZ. Okay? So he unfortunately had to change the air handler. Okay? But it will let you know things are not right, the EcoNet, instead of trying to let it run. Okay? If you're setting it up with a 24-volt system, you're using the contractor app, it may ask you some different questions in here, whether it's a single stage or two stage. Okay? What tonnage it is. If it's a furnace, it may ask you, it comes from the factory setting for the return coming in the bottom. I don't know if anybody does any side returns, but if you do any side returns, you need to select side return here because the torque value of that air pulling across that motor is different, and you have different temperature rise going across that heat exchanger. Okay? So it needs to know about that. You may not get the airflow that you want out of it if you leave it at factory setting. Okay? Defrost termination temperature. You can change that. EXV superheat offset. This is only going to be on the 18 SEER units because our 15 and 16 have TXVs. All right? Only the 18 has an EXV. But I will tell you this. If you feel the need that you need to change this because you can't get your temperatures or pressures right before you change this, call me. Because even on the old 17s and 20s, you used to change it on a little board that we had on the coil, a little microprocessor board on that coil, and it was usually not the board that you needed to change. It was either charge, TXV, or airflow related is why we couldn't get the superheat that we were looking for. Okay? So if you get to think you need to change this, give me a call and let's talk about it before you go changing it. Okay? If we continue for our advanced settings, we'll do this. We'll come up and it'll say warning. We continue with advanced settings. Proceed with caution at your own risk. Make sure that you want to adjust these airflow settings. And reason why is you can come in here and change this airflow setting 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, and we can change this airflow up to 30%. So we can increase it or decrease it. So let's say we have a 3-ton, 1,200 CFM, roundabout speaking, right? If we reduce it 30%, we're looking at what? 900 CFM, maybe? Is that good for a 3-ton? Probably not, huh? So when it asks you, it's asking you if you really know what you're doing. Do you really want to change this? Just remember, these numbers are accumulative. They add up. There's not just one. You change it 10 and it's 10% everywhere. Or you change it 10 here and 10 there and it's just 10% everywhere. They're accumulative. So just keep that in mind. What I suggest, unless you just really have a reason you want to adjust these airflow settings, leave them alone. When you come back in 6 months, which most companies do, and do a happy call or whatever to make sure Miss air conditioning system is running like and she says, well, Mike, I'm just not getting that air in the back bedroom now, like I really thought I would, And you go through and you check your charge and you check the ductwork and everything is open. Well, maybe we could go in here and increase the airflow a little bit. Maybe get her some more air back there, right? I think that's the time to approach that airflow change at that point. But then if we change these airflow settings, what do we want to do? Guys, what do we want to do? We want to check the what? Check the charge, right? We want to make sure that we check that charge, okay? If we reduce it or increase it, okay? We want to make sure that we recheck that charge. So this one said we did not find a connected outdoor unit. So you could have a Bluetooth air handler or furnace inside and a regular 14 SEER condensing unit outside, right? So that 14 SEER is not Bluetooth compatible, right? Doesn't have a Bluetooth board in it. You can still use it with that system, but then when you go in for the furnace or air handler, you need to set it up and tell it whether it's 1 or 2 stage, what tonnage it is, so it knows how much air to blow for that size unit outside. It just wants to know a little bit of information about it, okay? This really takes seconds to do on your phone. We talk about it a lot, but it takes seconds to do. Heat pump and cooling blower off delay. If there's anything that comes from the factory, on this, it's set at 45 seconds. So when that compressor cuts off, that blower is going to run for 45 seconds. That's probably not a good idea in our climate with our humidity levels and everything here for that blower to run after that compressor is cut off to 45 seconds. So you can come in here and you can select it to 0, okay? That way we're not re-moisturizing our house. In Vegas or up north, they might be a great idea. They want some humidity, but we don't want to dump any more back in the house after we've already taken it out, right? Okay. So that might be something you want to look at when you change one of these out, these 15, 16, or 18 SEER units. Change that setting, okay? When you do change these settings, I want to mention, if you go up 5 or 10% here, it gives you a CFM number. It will show you what you changed it to. It will show you the increase, so you'll know how much CFM you're dealing with, okay? We talked about our defrost termination. You can come in here and change it. I think probably 60 on the default is probably good for our areas. System status. I really like this feature, guys. This is a great feature to have. So if we select system status and we select our air handler, let it connect, this is the information without putting any gauges on it that you can get off of your phone. Okay? You can get commanded CFM, current CFM, static pressure, supply air temperature, EXV current position if it's an 18 SEER. Okay? Suction pressure, saturation, and a lot more information right off of your phone without even putting a gauge on it. This is a great feature going forward because if we're just doing maintenance and been going out to Miss Smith's on her brand new unit for the past 3 years, and we go out there one day and we go, Miss Smith, I found your system about a pound and a half low on Freon today. I couldn't find a leak. I wonder where the leak was. Because I've been coming every 6 months doing what with my hoses? Psh, 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 twice every year, right? And guess who the leak is? I'm the leak. If you have this on your phone, if it's a Bluetooth, you're going out there just to do maintenance, and she's happy with everything, and you're just cleaning it, why put your gauges on it if you connect to it and all the pressures look good?
You don't have to open the system.
Because if you do refrigeration work, if it's an ice machine, you don't want to put your gauges on an ice machine, right? Because you lose that amount of refrigerant you lose in your hoses affects that charge, right? Same thing here. We went to 7mm tubing in our outdoor units, so the amount of refrigerant we need now has been less than it was before. They're looking at changing on the next coil design change to change that to 7mm tubing. So now our refrigerant levels are going to go down even more. So if we put our hoses on it and do that, we lose refrigerant, right? Okay? So just keep that in mind. It's a great app. Furnaces. Same kind of information you can get off your furnace. I want to say part of the information up here you don't see on this is flame sensor. All of the new furnaces, the flame sensors are digital signal, okay? It's not millivolts like it used to be. You can't take your meter, put it in series, pull that little plug off, that wire off of there, put one in here and a lead here, and the other lead on that flame sensor and see what the millivolts is going through that flame sensor. Can't do that anymore. It's a digital signal. So you need the app to open up the furnace. If you're having some problems with that flame sensor, it's going to tell you whether it's good, bad, weak, low, all right? So that's going to be a way you can troubleshoot because it's a digital signal, right? Outdoor unit, we can get compressor speed. If it's running off that drive, we can get compressor speed, outdoor temp, subcool, superheat, discharge temps, liquid pressures, coil temps. A lot of great information off of there, okay? Diagnostics. We're going to talk about diagnostics quite a few times during today here, okay? But if we have the guest feature, we're going to click on diagnostics, choose our outdoor equipment they've chosen here, and it'll tell you all of the alarms that we have on our outdoor equipment. Here's an A001 model data configuration area, 240 volts inverter comm failure, coil thermistor failure, suction temperature thermistor failure, suction pressure sensor failure. Okay? One of the things I want to point out, guys, and if you call me and you say, hey, I have a 953 coil I have a coil thermistor code. What number? What's the code? What's the code? It's an A953. It's an A953 what? I need that other letter designation, and you want that also, because it's going to tell you the piece of equipment that you're working on. The O would be for what? Outdoor unit, right? An A would be for what, guys? Air handler. F would be for a furnace. That's very important. I've had guys call me and say, Mike, I've had the thermistor failure. I've changed it 3 times. It's still giving me the same thermistor failure. What code do you have? I have an A953O. Where'd you change the thermistor? On the air handler. Wrong piece of equipment. So we need to know, because we've got thermistors inside and outside. So we need to know that last letter designation so we know what piece of equipment we're working on. Okay? It's very important. If you have just the guest account, this is what you're going to get. Okay? If you have the login feature, then you can click on this tab and you get this to come up. Now it's going to go through and tell you the coil thermistor is a crucial part for heating. The heating and cooling, the fault indicates coil thermistor has failed. Check the thermistor on 10K ohm chart. Replace if necessary. That's a very basic and short one. So if you get that alarm, basically it's just bad. It could be corroded, okay? We make sure when we put these thermistors on, you need to sand the copper good. And I have guys take electrical tape and wrap it to seal it so no air gets into it. Because it's sitting on a cold suction line, right? And if air gets to it, it creates moisture. So if we seal off that air, we don't create that moisture and create that corrosion. So it could be just corroded. But more than likely, it's probably bad. But this is just a real simple one. I've been going down the road and talking to guys in different alarms. And it takes 3 or 4 screenshots on my phone to send them everything, the list that this long, the things to check and go through on the possible causes of that code that they have. Okay? So if you have the login, you really need the login feature, because like today, if you have just the guest feature and you don't have the login feature and you're calling me this morning, I'm going to click I'm busy until what, about 1 o'clock today. And you can't sit there at that homeowner's house waiting for me to finish teaching a class till 1 o'clock. So that's why we give you these tools here to be able to help you, and you need this login feature so you don't hopefully have to wait on myself or Jody. All right? Also, this is where we talked about O for outdoor, F furnaces, air handlers, T if it's a thermostat alarm, Z for zoning, okay? A for all alarms. Also, too, you've got little codes outside on the board. It'll say D1 or whatever, so you can get your alarms and alerts, and it'll also tell you what the codes are out on the outdoor board, okay? I really like the EcoNet alarms, though. They really get you more dialed in on the information that you need and what the possible causes are. So we're going to go over our EcoNet stat, okay? The EcoNet stat is really the way to go. I know they got homeowners out there, the geek guys, and they love their Nest thermostats, okay? But if you just give them a little education and show them this thermostat, this thing does 10 times more than that Nest ever thought about, okay? And you won't have the issues. The Nest is going to cause issues, I promise you. It caused this gentleman, I was thinking he was talking about a communicating system that he had problems with the Nest thermostat. And it was just a regular 14 SEER that was bringing on the outdoor fan motor, okay? So those power robbing thermostats, I just don't like them. They're a pain. So for our EcoNet familiarization here, this is our EcoNet, pretty sleek looking thermostat. All right, up here in the top we have our Wi-Fi where we connect our Wi-Fi. Go through and get started. You're better off letting the homeowner download the app on their phone while they're there and let them do this. Okay, it's going to ask for name. It wants to know password information, Wi-Fi information, and you're just better off letting them do that. If they have any problems, if you have any problems with setup, right? If it has to do with the app or the Wi-Fi connection, I am not your guy. Okay? I am not your guy for that. And we'll show you further on here. There's a 1-800 number that you can call for app or Wi-Fi support. It's all these people do. It's a 1-800 number. And they do them for all different brands. But they're really good at their job, and they walk through a customer through step by step, hand by hand, and push button by button to get it set up correctly. And that's what the resource that you need. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. So for your Wi-Fi geek, for your thermostat geeks, they can get the Wi-Fi status with all their MAC address and IP address and everything off of the thermostat if they want it. If you have an alarm, it's going to give you a little orange triangle up here to let you know that you have an alarm. It'll also give you weather forecast and the outdoor temperature. Let's talk about the outdoor temperature right here. David Brennan, our Ring Tech guy that we work with closely, he had one of these in Texas. It was a 16 SEER and it wouldn't run. Wouldn't give him any alarms on the app or the EcoNet, but it wouldn't run. Couldn't get it in charge mode. Wouldn't come on for nothing. Then he happened to notice, he finally went out to the job site and happened to notice up here where the temperature display was, there was a question mark. That's for the outdoor temperature. It gets it from the outdoor unit. So he went out there, took the door off, and where the outdoor ambient temperature plugs into the board, it was plugged in, but one of the pins was not plugged in, pushed in all the way on that little Molex plug.
It didn't know what it was doing.
It didn't know what the temperature was. But it didn't throw an alarm either. So once they fixed that and pushed it in, the system came on and ran. So hopefully he did mention it to the engineer, so I believe that they probably made an alarm for it, so it diagnosed. That's one of those updates things, you know what I'm saying, that we need to make sure our phones are updated so we give all the updates to it. But there should be an alarm out there for that now, so he just happened to notice that there was a question mark up there. He's like, well, what's this up here for? He knew that it was supposed to be outdoor temperature, and I'll show you later on where it plugs in on that board outside in case you do have that problem. Okay. 6-day weather forecast down here that you have. This is where our select mode for our auto, heat, cool, emergency heat, fan on and off. There's a couple of places in here to change the fan mode on this unit. So if you get that homeowner that calls you and says, hey, my fan runs all the time, wherever they change this at is the place you're going to have to go back and change it to make it stop. Okay? If you come in here and you get out there, if the customer's there and you say, well, I got cool on, but I touched that fan symbol and nothing happens. It doesn't do anything. They have to turn it off first and then select that fan button. Okay? Then it will come up and give them a chance to select it from medium low, medium high, or to auto. Okay? That's why they have to do it. But they have to have it off before that works. Okay? And there's another spot I'm going to show you later on where to change it. This is our menu button down here. We call the little hamburger symbol. And it brings us to our menu settings, schedule, status, and service. In settings, we have our basic here. Basic settings, follow schedule. I had one as they changed the thermostat twice. And finally, my guy had to go out to the job site. He even took the controller with him just in case. He called me on the way, and I said, they've got to have a schedule running because it was just changing temperatures all the time by itself. No, they don't have a temperature. I didn't ask them about that. They don't have a schedule. They don't have a schedule. They don't have a schedule. Okay, well, call me when you get there. He called me, and we went to the screen, and it said following schedule. I said, what does it say? He said, yes. I said, they have a schedule in it. There's a schedule in it that it's running. So select that off. They're not going to use a schedule or alarm beep enabled. Remember, I was in the Navy for 14 years? That alarm going off in the middle of the night is worse than the fire alarm in your house. Okay? My suggestion, turn that alarm beep off. Because in the middle of the night, it's it will piss people off in the middle of the night and scare the crap out of them. Okay? They're still going to get the alarm on the front of it, and they can tell that there's something wrong, but at least it won't wake them up out of a dead sleep. Okay? So that's just a suggestion. You can leave it on if they want it, but just make them aware it's loud. Okay? Come into here, we can set proximity settings. Proximity settings, if you walk by that thermostat, it wakes up, right? Somebody walk by it, then it comes on. Some people say, well, my thermostat's black. It don't ever do nothing until I walk by. It's because you have proximity settings on. Just turn it off if they want it on all the time. Lit up all the time. Smooth arrival. Do we know what smooth arrival is? If you have a schedule and it's set to bring it to from 78 to 74 degrees at 4 o'clock. Smooth arrival is it knows what the temperature is outside, right? And what the temperature is inside. So it's going to come on at 3:15. So when you walk through the door at 4 o'clock, it's 74 degrees. Smooth arrival. Okay. If you don't want that, you can click it off and it'll just start coming down at 4 o'clock to 74 degrees. So it might take you a half hour to get home and be fine, but that's what smooth arrival is. Okay. Time, pretty basic here. Daylight savings time we can set up in here. Humidity. Let's talk about this one. Is an air conditioner a dehumidifier? Go, Shake your head. It's not a dehumidifier. Okay. We as an industry and commercialized and marketing and stuff has kind of gotten the misleading as we talk about SEER rating, and people have coordinated that with humidity, and it's not. SEER is a seasonal energy efficiency ratio. It's just how much energy it uses. Okay. So we want to be careful. It comes from the factory. If you get those guys that love to go in here and play with stuff, it comes at 52%. Is that kind of realistic for our market to get 52% relative humidity in the home? Probably not. Okay. 56, 57, maybe, 58, maybe, something like that. Okay. Now, if they want more, if they want less, what do we need to be talking about? A dehumidifier. Okay. Because the air conditioner does dehumidify, but it's just a byproduct of cooling. If the air conditioner is running, it's dehumidifying, okay?
To a certain point.
To a certain point, that's right. Our older systems, we talked about that sensible latent earlier, used to be 75-25, and we're lucky if we're at 85-15 now. So we have less latent heat removal than we used to 20 or 30 years ago in the equipment, right? So they're just not doing as good a job of it as we used to. And the systems are sold on energy efficiency, these two-stage and multi-stage equipment, because they use less electricity at those lower stages, right? They run longer and use less electricity. Do you think we dehumidify better on the low stage or the high stage?
I don't think the low stage.
No, high stage. But we're not selling them as dehumidifiers, right? They're sold as energy efficiency. But that's where people are looking, watching commercials, and they kind of get misconstrued that that's part of it, and it really isn't. It's all about energy efficiency, okay? So we really dehumidify better at the higher stages than we do the lower stages. But they're designed to run longer on lower stage because of energy efficiency. So just keep that in mind when you're out there looking at replacing that old system. Really talk to that customer. What are their wishes? What do they like about their system? What is it they don't like about their old system? Okay? At night, do they sleep comfortable? Do they get sticky at night? Or there's times during the day that they're sticky? You know what I mean? So really ask those questions so you can make a better informative decision on what you want to put in there and maybe add a dehumidifier. I believe our dehumidifier sales in the past 4 years have just quadrupled over the past few years as systems have changed, and our dehumidifier sales have went up drastically, okay, because of that factor. Okay.
So what are you recommending, like on the enabled dehumidification? What are you recommending?
To do, if they want to enable dehumidification, I would move it up to 56, 57%. Give us something a little bit more realistic to shoot for. I've had people come in and they'll come in and set it down to 35%, 45%. And if they're looking at that number, it's just not going to happen. Okay? And if they want something like that, then you need to offer whole home dehumidification. It's got an away setting. Anytime you hit this away setting, it goes to those temperatures. Vacation mode. You can put a vacation mode. Look, they got one set up in here for January the 29th through February the 10th. And when that comes around, it'll go to these temperatures while they're gone and go back to regular temperatures when they get back. This is that other place for that fan setting that I told you about. So if that homeowner changed it here and not at that other place that I told you about, this is where you got to come and change it back. Okay? I wish they had just one spot for the fan, but they don't. Okay? So this is where we come in here and we can set it to medium, low, or whatever, and to auto. This is where we've got to change that fan setting. Schedule. We can come in here for a schedule, make one day like we want it, and copy and paste to the next days. Okay? We don't have to do each separate day. status. This is going to be a screen, if you call me, that we're going to become infinitely good at, okay? Because I'm going to want pictures of some information off of this screen to help me help you diagnose what's going on with the system, okay? So if we go for the furnace, in here it's got our furnace status screen. If we're working on a furnace, I want a picture of this screen so I can see what the static pressure is, our RPM, and our CFM. Sometimes I get a bad rep. People say that I concentrate on this static pressure here. I really don't. I take all the information I can get together. I want this, I want the CFM, and I want the RPM. Just like when I'm charging a system, I'm not focused in on 10 degrees of subcool. I want to know what my temperature split is. I want what my superheat is. I want to know what my suction line temperature is. I want to know what my coil temperature is. And I use all of that information together to make a decision on what's going on with the system. Same thing with this status screen. Because if I see a high static pressure here, and I see 1600 CFM here, we say we have a 4-ton, and I see 1225 RPM, we have an airflow problem. What tells me that? The high static pressure. This blower is rated for 1250 RPMs. I'm moving 1225 or 1200 RPM. That ECM motor is screaming to do what? What does it want to give me? It wants to give me my 1600 CFM, right? And it's doing that. That's what those motors were designed to, give us airflow. But they do it at the cost of static pressure and RPM of that motor. What if we've replaced that motor twice in the last 3 years? Wonder why. So if we have this, you say, well, we're moving 1600. I got good airflow, but you're not cooling, right? What's the velocity of that air going across that coil? We want it around 700 feet per minute. It's probably up around 900 or 1,000. So if it's screaming across that coil, we're not staying in contact with that coil. We're not gathering the superheat that we need, right? The coil's getting colder. We don't have the superheat that we need. Now, what are we sending back to the compressor? Liquid that we don't want to send back. And we're going to talk about that later, too. So just it all works together. So I don't focus just on one piece, but it all works together, guys. You can get an outdoor status of the outdoor unit here. Tell you inverter current speed, crankcase temperature. It's got subcool and superheat with some of the updates that have come out now. You get more information here. Wrong way. Air handler. Air handler's got the same thing. So I may tell you, depending on what we're working on, I need a picture of the furnace status or the air handler status screen. Okay. Service. We can come in here to alerts. We can have a setup to give them alert and have them call you every 12 months to come out and service their equipment. Let them know when the filter is almost full. If they want to set it on a monthly basis or a percentage used for that air filter, so they'll know whether to change their air filter or not. This is that support number we talked about. If you have Wi-Fi or app support needed, this is that 1-800 number that you give the customers to call. I am not your guy. Equipment. I'm going to want a picture of this equipment screen. It's going to give my furnace or air handler model and serial number, outdoor model and serial number. And it's also going to give us thermostat, furnace, and outdoor unit software information. So if we have the wrong software or there's updated software, this could be our problem, and you can go and update the board going forward and being able, we don't have to change memory cards or anything or have somebody come out and change it for you. We can all do it on our phone. Outdoor unit checkout. If you come into here, anytime we put our gauges on an inverter-driven piece of equipment, we need to have it in charge mode because that inverter is sitting there doing this. It's just like a drill, right? It's up and down. It's varying the speed. If we don't lock it in, we don't know. It's kind of like checking a unit that has a fan cycle switch outside. It comes on and then it goes off. The pressures are up and down. Same kind of thing, okay? So we need to lock it into one speed so we can check those pressures and charge it correctly. Okay? I get this call a lot. They say, well, hey, I'm here, but it won't do anything. It just says off. I'm pressing the arrow, and it doesn't do nothing. That's because you need to touch up here first, okay, on the screen where it says off. And then you can scroll over to cool charge or heat charge, and then you hit start test down here. Just remember, if we start the test, we have to what? Stop the test, or it's going to run forever, okay? So if you start the test, you have to stop the test. Installer. To get into the installer menu, you have to hold the installer button down for 5 seconds. It can bring you into here. They have taken the history of alarms, which this doesn't show, but the history of alarms are now in the installer section because it was out in the open menu and homeowners would go through there and clear the alarms trying to get the unit back running, and then you get out there and don't know what alarms is in it. Or you're still going to find the smart ones that figured out how to get into the installer and they'll still do it. But it's better this way, at least. You know, we kind of hid it a little bit. So you're going to want to look at the current alarms and the history of alarms. Our furnace settings, you can come in here to furnace. If you have a furnace or an air handler, you come into here. This aux1 and aux2 configuration here, this is where we set up our float switch. Okay? On the new boards now, it doesn't say aux1 or aux2 anymore because some government entity told the manufacturers they had to have a designated condensate switch, a designated water circuit switch. You couldn't say auxiliary. It had to be designated that. So now on the new boards, it says common and CS for condensate switch. So when we hook up our float switch, we don't break red, we don't break common, we don't break E1 or E2. Okay? It has to be go to the board and then set up in the EcoNet as a float switch. So you click on here, click on it, make it normally closed, click on the off part, and it'll bring up float switch. Select that, and now you have your float switch hooked up. Okay? So we don't break red, we don't break common or E1 or E2 to go in any of these units. All right? You can put a media or electronic filter in here, select that. If you have propane, you want to select propane on here from natural gas. Also, if you do have propane, remember, you got to get a propane kit, change the orifices on the gas furnace and the spring inside the gas valve, okay? If you don't do that and you go back a few months and you don't change none of that, and you go up to the house and you look at the flue pipe, if it hasn't caught on fire, it's black as that bag over there. And you go, oh my gosh, okay? That's what happened. Yeah, right. So be careful with that. AC and the outdoor unit heat pumps. So on the 18 SEER, that 18 SEER compressor is a fully variable speed compressor. And it'll run from 15% up to 120% capacity. Okay? A normal compressor runs at about 3,600 RPM. That 18 SEER will run up to 7,000 RPM. So it just takes a little bit of education with the homeowner and make them aware that it is capable of producing up to 120% capacity if it needs it, if they demand it. A lot of times this happens in heat pumps where homeowners, they sleep at 68, 67 degrees. The mom gets up in the morning, she wants the kiddies warm when they get up, right? So she turns it up to 70, 71. Well, what's she think that outdoor unit's going to do with a 4-degree temperature difference? And instead of hearing outside here, it's just a different sound. There's nothing wrong with it. So just make a little education and make them aware of what's going on with the system that they have purchased. It's doing what they want it to do. Okay? So it works just now. If this is really a problem, because we left that, when we changed it out, we left that unit beside that bedroom window, right? Which just should never be beside one, but that's where the house was built, right? You might want to consider moving it, okay, at that time. But if you didn't, you can come in here and adjust this variable speed clamp. I would tell you could take it all the way down to about 5,000 or 5,500 RPM, and it's still going to produce above what the normal, won't produce the 120%, but it's still going to give them more capacity. But that sound is not as loud as it was before, and maybe that'll suffice them, and they don't have to look, okay, we changed it some, this is what we did, but it's still going to sound like that. So a little bit of education, but you can change it if you have a persistent homeowner, okay? You can do an airflow cool adjust there if you need to. Thermostat, if you get a thermostat that says Ream, you can click on that and change it to Ruud or Sure Comfort, whatever you're putting in. Air handlers, electric heat size. Before, with those 17s and 20s before this year, you had to come in here and select it and put it with a 5, 10, or 15. Now the new heat kits, you plug it in, it tells you whether it's 5, 10, or 15, right? Okay, so you don't have to do that. We do have some updates out there that we'll go over a little bit later that you have to go in. The heat doesn't come on when you put in this new air handler. That's because the fan motor speeds did not get programmed in some of the boards for the heat mode. So we're going to show you how to reprogram that board later on to take care of all of that. What is this? Anybody know what this is? How many of you have installed an EcoNet thermostat before? Anybody? No one has put in an EcoNet? You put one? So this is a little ferrite ring, okay, that drowns out communication noise. If you put in an EcoNet, or if you have any type of communicating thermostat, you probably got one of these in the package. Don't throw it away. It goes on the low voltage wires going to that thermostat. And if there's any kind of line noise or anything, because this is communicating, this is data, this is pulsating information going through there, it drowns out any of those electrical noises, okay? If you don't put this in there, you could have erroneous communication errors, and you don't know what it is. It could be because this little donut isn't back there behind that thermostat in the wall, okay? It doesn't have to be perfectly mounted like that in that perfect little hole. It wouldn't, but it's not going to hurt, okay? You still want to make sure you seal up this hole so you're not getting air infiltration from the back side of that, right? So you don't want a gargantuan hole, but if you do, you need to seal it up, okay? So this is one of the little things here that I like to say. We need to check our connections, okay? We need to check our connections real good. We're going to go over this later in another piece of the presentation. Use the screws that come with it. If you wind up using a sheetrock screw, this thermostat is not going to mount flushly on that base. So please use the screws that come with it, okay? Equipment overview. We're going to go through here and talk about our outdoor units, our split heat pumps, our furnaces, our air handlers, and our residential package units. The UA18, which took the place of the 20, is still a fully modulating scroll compressor, variable scroll compressor. It's that one that runs from 15 to 120% and will sit there and maintain that temperature to within 1 degree all day long. And it's up and down all day long. It's variable. So you may go outside and not hear it running, and you may go outside here depending on what the load is. Okay. The 16 and the 15s are a mid-tier inverter or 3-speed rotary compressor. Okay. If this 18 has to be on an EcoNet, the 16 and 15 can be on an EcoNet or a 24-volt thermostat. Okay? Not the Nest. I didn't say that. But it can be on a 24-volt thermostat. Okay? We're going to show you the differences between the EcoNet and the 24-volt system, but it will run. Twin rotary compressor. All three have a brushless DC fan motor. Okay? Not a PSC motor anymore, not an ECM. It's a brushless DC fan motor. The RA14AZ, which we have, we do not stock the 13. It's not in our area to be able to sell. But the 14 has a single-stage scroll compressor with a PSC or an ECM motor. The 5-ton has the ECM motor. Everything else has the PSC fan motor in it. Okay, so if you get a 5-ton, it does have an ECM motor. Okay, that's where you had that problem with that Nest thermostat. That's why I was bringing it, because it had an ECM motor plugged into it instead. If it had a
You don't
PS,
think it would did it on a 4-ton?
no, because it would have had to pull the contactor in, but you were getting enough voltage through that ECM motor to make that motor run. That's why it was running on that Nest thermostat again. Okay. Heat pumps. We have our UP18. This is still our variable speed scroll. Our RP16AZ twin rotary. The RP15, which is part of the mid-tier line, is not an inverter-driven piece of equipment, but it is like the 14 SEER 2-stage. So Rheem does not make a single-stage heat pump anymore. I'll say that again. Rheem does not make a single-stage heat pump anymore. All 2-stage. So I've had some guys, well, I didn't want a 2-stage. Well, that's what we sell now. So I'm going to show you how to hook that up later on. It's just a single wire coming from the solenoid to the side of the compressor. It's not on the board in the control compartment. I'll show you where that is later. Our furnaces here. Y'all do any twinning here? Twin furnaces, do some twinning now and then? The only furnaces that you can twin are these three at the bottom. They have to have a T at the end of it, designation. You cannot twin any of the variables at all. Okay? Only these three right here can we twin together. They're the only ones that's supported. They're the only ones that has the little twinning switch in there. Okay? So keep that in mind. Now, how many is twin? 2. It's not 3, right? It's not 4, right? You'd be surprised. I have contractors that call me and say, hey, I got 3, I got 4. How do I get them twinned together? You don't. Twinning is 2. But this is what it had before. I said, does it have relays and stuff jump together? It wasn't supposed to be done then, but somebody made it work. I can't help you support that. Okay? So twinning is only meant for 2. What air handlers do you think we can twin in this group? None of them. Nope. None of them. Rheem does not support twinning air handlers. None at all. None at all. Rheem does not support twinning air handlers. But I got these twinning air handlers sitting together. They're Rheem. Somebody made them work. Not to say it can't be, but Rheem is not going to support. We're not going to support twinning them together. Okay? Let's talk about this in airflow. Okay, a little bit. So, in the installation instructions for furnaces and coils, if you have a 17-inch furnace and you have a 17-inch coil, it says in the installation instructions, it is recommended to use a transition but not required. If you have a 17-inch furnace and a 21-inch coil, it says it's recommended to have a transition but not required. If you have a 17-inch furnace and a 24-inch coil, it's required to have a transition. Okay? But you wouldn't see that very much probably, but that's what it is. It's in there. If you're in the vertical or downflow position, it tells you if you have a 17-inch furnace and a 21-inch coil, you have to center that coil on the furnace. Kind of easy to do, right? You just put it in the middle and put half on this side and half on this side, right? And it's supposed to be okay. All right? One of the things that I would be aware of is now, if y'all remember on our coils that come out there, they have this heat shield, this metal heat shield that's in there. Okay? It's supposed to protect the pan from warping or anything in the heat mode. Well, what does that do when that air hits it? It makes all kind of turbulence and everything, right? It has a lot of turbulence when it comes out of that heat exchanger coming all across those tubes also. And now we're hitting this piece of metal in between there that Rheem says, oh, it doesn't affect it none. I'm sorry. It does. Okay? It creates turbulence. If we have turbulent air going across that evaporator coil, we're not getting clean linear air going across it in good contact with that furnace and for that evaporator coil. Okay? So,
Does it hurt to take them out?
well, they're in there for a reason. I haven't seen any problems with them, but they made it for a reason. And if you could have airflow, I would tell you if you've got them warping pans and stuff, you have airflow issues further down the line, is what I would say. But this is what Rheem has come out and said, and in their installation instructions, it doesn't say anything about being able to take it out. So to solve any problems or not come across any problems, I'll always tell you, follow the installation instructions, okay? But we really should have that transition. That 12-inch transition in there gives us a chance for that air to straighten out and become linear and go straight across that evaporator coil to not have any turbulent air going through it. I've had a few instances where he has put this in a closet and he's put it all to one side and he's got 4 inches on one side. Mike, I can't get my temperatures right. My pressures are doing this. You got it centered in there? No. I said, well, didn't we do that on last one? Didn't it fix it? Yeah. Okay, why don't you put it centered again and call me back? And he called me back a week. Hey, Mike, it fixed it again? Well, that's why it says it needs to be centered on that evaporator coil. So, but this is kind of easy to do in a closet, right? What about a horizontal application? In order to make that work in a horizontal application, if we're not going to use a transition, we got to have a different size heater stand on the furnace and a different size heater stand on the coil. Are y'all going to take 2 different size heater stands? Come on, guys. I know. You grab one, right?
No, we do.
You grab one and you just slide it up there, and then we got 4 inches hanging on the top, right? And block it off. Now we got 4 inches of air that's not going across that evaporator coil, along with the turbulent air that's going inside the evaporator coil, right? So we really need to talk about start using on transitions. I would on every change out, even if it is the same size furnace and coil. You need that air to straighten out and become linear before it goes through that evaporator coil, so it works most efficiently. So I would tell you that you really need to get in this habit, I would, of using transitions, okay? Because a lot of times it solves a lot of problems. You know, they're worth it. They have a little access door on it. So now you've got access. Also, you've got another place to clean it, right? Inspect the coil, right? Okay, because everybody knows that everybody changes their filters like they're supposed to. And you have a place, too, to check. If we want to check static on this unit, where do we check it at? We don't check it here and here, right? We have to check it here and here. Okay, because if we check it here and here, we don't have the coil in our static pressure drop, whatever it is. Okay?
Mike, we could also install the Remy Halo.
Yeah, a Remy Halo, right?
Whatever type of piece
Yep.
of product you want to put, you can install it.
You can put that in there also.
Now
And to go
now it's hitting the coil.
right, and to go back and think about just think about this. This one thing that I didn't realize till a few months ago too. So let's say our 17-inch coil, the static pressure drop on that 17-inch coil, we're going to say is about a 0.35. The 21-inch coil, I think, is about 2.7. The 24-inch coil is about 2.1 or something like that. So look, it's got less pressure drop on that wider coil because the fins aren't as close together. We don't have as much restriction going through there. So the smaller coil you use, the more restriction. So if we start off with a 0.32 on a coil and we really wanted it at 0.5, we don't have much to deal with for ductwork after that, right? Do we? And return stuff and everything like that. So you might pay you to use a bigger coil, put a transition, and you'll have better airflow throughout the house. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Package units. We now have EcoNet compatible package units. EcoNet compatible package units we have. Also, too, remember most of our package units now are all two-stage. All two-stage compressors. Well, I don't want a two-stage. Okay? They ask me, so well, that's mainly what we have. They do have some out here, the RHCBZR, which is a single stage, but there's not many out there anymore. Okay? So more than likely, you're going to get a two-stage system. Well, Mike, do I have to run new wire? And can I just tie, Y1 and Y2 together? Yeah. But is the customer getting what they paid for? No. You can. But just remember that, you know what I mean? So just look at it going forward. It'll put you a little bit extra time in there to run that new low voltage wire and put that two-stage stat inside for that customer. But y'all can do what you want to. But just remember, they are two stages now, okay? We're going to get into a little bit of overview for our units and our compressors in here, what we got going through, okay? We've got Copeland and LG compressors, okay? Copeland and LG. We have our two-stage Copeland and LG. We're going to talk about our differences there. We have our highly twin rotor, which is for our 15 and 16 SEER systems. And then our variable speed scroll that we've had forever on our 17s and 20s, okay? Still great compressor. I love it. Our regular compressor on both the Copeland and the LG is the same. POE oil, 208, 230, single phase, 60 hertz compressor. This is what we kind of talk about here. This is our suction funnel that we have on our compressor. Oh, I forgot a part here. Pass this around, guys. Let you play with it. If we don't have our airflow right, this is what happens to our compressor. Okay? So you've heard me talk about airflow and everything. This is what we want to do. That compressor there ran 7 seconds. 7 seconds. So if we don't have our airflow right and our charge right, that is what happens. They do not pump liquid. And what happened, it got in there with liquid, and that's what happens when it tries to pump liquid. It just comes apart. If you've never seen the inside working of a scroll, it's pretty neat to watch. Our LG single stage is pretty much the same. I mean, it's not a lot different. It's just made by LG. They have a suction guide, not a suction funnel per se, because the suction funnel for Copeland has gotten a kind of a bad name. Theirs is metal, where the Copeland is plastic, but there's never been any issues with the plastic part coming apart. It's been the scroll plates inside that break, okay? So not really any different. There's some people I've heard out there that sell Carrier. It's all the same compressor. You can ask Copeland. They don't make special compressors for Daikin or anybody else or Carrier. The two-stage scroll compressors, the difference in the Copeland and the LG is the Copeland has an internal DC solenoid, okay? We get 24 volts coming from the board, the control board, to this plug on the side of the compressor here to a rectifier. And it converts that AC signal to a DC signal into that solenoid. The calls that I get off of the Copeland side is, hey, Mike, when it goes into high stage, it pops the fuse. Okay? Pull the plug off the side of that solenoid, off of that compressor, have the power off. Go get your ohm meter, ohm it to ground. If the solenoid ohm's good, it's more than likely that plug going to that compressor. Look at it further. If you look in the side there, you may see some rust streaks on the compressor and in the plug itself. That tells me that moisture has gotten in there. Has it gotten in there from rain? Not from what I have seen. The ones that I have been on, it's been charge and airflow related. That compressor started back up, check the charge and the airflow, and the compressor's sweating all the way up that compressor because of charge and airflow problems, okay? So just because we can know what the problem is and fix it, we need to dig a little further so we understand that it's going to happen again if we don't fix the other problems, okay? Keep that in mind. The LG now, it has a 24-volt external solenoid. It plugs in right here, so it gets 20. It's just like a little solenoid that goes to your reversing valve. Comes off of the board, goes there, sends 24 volts when it wants to energize it. No big thing. So it's external. Same compressors, basically 208, 240. The Copeland has a 24-volt internal solenoid. So there's our suction funnel that we talked about that you've seen there in the pictures in front of you. Shows you how the two-stage works. The ports open and close. It's 100%. See, there's our ports right here. Going down to 65% first stage. There's our bypass ports. It's just seen right there. The lifting ring, the modulating ring. Here's our solenoid. Okay, this is what the LG looks like. So with the external, it works just a little bit different. Still accomplishes the same thing though. Solenoid valve off. Now we're bypassing. And both for the Copeland and the LG, this is our fixed compressor speed, and this is our two-stage. So you can see where our energy loss is on the fixed compressor and their energy savings on the two-stage. So now we're looking at our highly twin rotary compressor. POE all steel, 208, 240, single phase. We've kind of talked and showed you some things here. We've talked about airflow and how we don't want liquid back in our compressors, and this is what happens to them, okay? But if Copeland and LG don't like liquid, Highly has stepped up and put an accumulator on the side of their rotary compressor and says we really don't like liquid, okay? So back talking about the ductwork at the very part of our training here, this is the way it was before. You're putting some of these ends, you need to address the ductwork if it needs to be addressed, okay? We put this accumulator to help not introduce any liquid into the system, but it can only save you from so much, okay? This is what our twin rotary compressor looks like from Highly. This is what our accumulator looks like. So this is our suction line that comes in right here. Should we get any liquid coming back into here? If we got liquid coming back into there, we could have what? A dirty coil, a bad TXV, bad airflow. We're not getting the superheat across that coil when that liquid goes into there. It means it's not all flashing off into a gas, right? And we're getting liquid droplets coming back into that suction line, okay? If we do that, this is here to help. It has a screen in here where the droplets hit the screen, come down to the outside, and we've got this little hole down here. I didn't show you all this earlier, but to keep liquid from getting into your systems, does everybody have a charge adapter for their hoses? Tim says he's got them in stock, so you need to get one. They're less than $10 probably, okay? But we're not supposed to ever, in any of the charging instructions, it says, you have 410A, you have to get it out of the drum as a liquid, but it says do not put liquid in the suction line. And for years, as contractors says, well, how the hell can you do that, right? Okay? This charge adapter goes there, and this is just, I like this small one. They have some different ones, and maybe a little bit longer, and it just has a little bitty hole in the bottom where the pressure pushes it through and converts it from a liquid to a gas, okay, to a vapor. It's my suggestion you get one of these and put it on your hoses. Put it where your yellow hose is, on your manifold. Does it take longer to charge with this? Mm-hmm. It does. But once you do it for 2 or 3 weeks, you will get used to it. Because none of the refrigerants we use anymore are supposed to go in the suction line as a liquid. Okay? I'll pass this around. Y'all can look at it. But just keep that in mind. Okay? It's going to save you from killing compressors. Okay? Which we've had some of them on startup die. It's probably that. Just keep that in mind. We've got to have the tools to be able to do these jobs correctly. Okay? Just like this accumulator will not save you. Let it run for 20 or 30 minutes before you think about adding refrigerant in charge mode. Because can we charge it? And if we can, and we fill it up with liquid and fill it up and fill it up and fill it up till it overflows this tube and gets in here to the bottom of that rotary compressor. And this looks big on the screen, but it doesn't hold that much refrigerant. Okay? So just keep that in mind going forward. Okay, guys? This is our twin rotary down here at the bottom. This is where we don't want liquid. We just want gas. This is our discharge port, okay, at the top up here. Going through and soldering with nitrogen. If you don't braze with nitrogen, you get those black corrosion stuff off, that gummy stuff off in there. This looks big, wide open here, but it's not. It's real fine. I mean, it's really, really small. And if you get that trash in there, you can stop this up, and it'll act just like a no-pump compressor, okay? So that's why we need to braze with nitrogen. Use good brazing practices. This is our truly variable speed scroll compressor. Okay. This is the one that goes from 15 to 120% of capacity. So it can run up to 7,000 RPM if we're calling for it. Okay. Brazing with nitrogen, brazing without nitrogen. This is what can get in that discharge port if you don't braze with nitrogen. Okay. Nitrogen regulator. This is a uniwell that we sell at the branches. I don't care what brand nitrogen regulator you get, as long as the nitrogen regulator you get has a braze selection switch on it, setting on it. Because if you go buy that $50 nitrogen regulator and you have to adjust the discharge and inlet on it every time, and you're over there trying to solder, oh, I got too much pressure. It blows out my flame. Oh, hold on. Oh, now I ain't got enough. I mean, if you go back trying to do it, you're going to leave that damn regulator in the truck and you ain't going to fool with it. So if you get one that has a braze selection on it, you just turn it to braze and it's automatically set. It lets the right amount out and you don't have to worry about it. Okay? And you don't have any problems. Okay? So we really need to start brazing with the proper tools. Okay? Micron gauges. How many people have a micron gauge? Do we have digital gauges? Everybody got digital gauges. Does no one not have digital gauges? Okay? We need to start having digital tools. That's kind of why I got some of this up here. We're going to talk about tools in a little bit. But did everybody know that on our analog gauges, the needle width on an analog gauge is worth 3,000 microns? So just because it's down to 30 inches of vacuum, what's it at? 3,000, 5,000 microns? We don't know. Okay? With our digital stuff, we can get it down and we'll know what we're at. Okay? So it makes a difference. We've got to pull good vacuums on systems, guys. The tools that you see up here are all field piece. I like field piece. Don't care what brand of tool that you buy. But digital is where we are. Analog is just not it's not going to cut it in today's equipment with the accuracies that we have to have with the charge and airflow and everything going forward. Does everybody in here own a manometer? We do now. Okay. Hey, one step, you know. You got a Christmas present one year, you know what I mean? You know, they're a great tool to have. You've got to have them to check static, okay? We talked about airflow, so that static pressure is going to be critical going forward for systems. Did everybody know when you put in a gas furnace, you're supposed to check the gas pressure? You go, well, why? Why? Isn't it already set? It's not set. Honeywell doesn't set it. Rheem doesn't set it. They just turn it on and it fires. It could have 7 inches of water column coming out of the discharge. Boy, that's going to be a hot flame in that furnace, isn't it? It's going to be hot. What's the life of that heat exchanger going to be with 7 inches of water column coming out? It's not going to last very long, is it? So airflow and gas charge has a lot to do with heat exchangers, okay? The life of heat exchangers. You think airflow for cooling, but airflow for heating side too also if you have to replace a heat exchanger. Okay, that's probably what happened to the cause of it. It's gotten hot, too hot. So going forward, new tools, digital scale, not a fish scale, right? Not even a digital fish scale. We want a digital scale so we can weigh this refrigerant in. We've talked about 7mm tubing in our outdoor and probably coming to our indoor products. So the refrigerant charge is getting less and less in systems. So if we hook up hoses to it, we've got to know how much we're putting in it, okay? Our variable speed scroll compressor is a 3-phase compressor. 3-phase compressor. So if we're ohming that compressor out and we're going across each leg, what common characteristics should each leg have?
They're all supposed to be the same.
All supposed to be the same, right. All supposed to be the same. So we might have 1 ohm on every one of them, or 2.5 ohms. But if we have 2.5 ohms, 2.5 ohms, and 5 ohms, oops, Houston, we have a problem, right? On these variable speed compressors, anything with an inverter drive, if you get an inverter fault, okay, you still want to verify the compressor is good by ohms. You want to check it across each leg and to ground, because the inverter driven systems are so smart, it doesn't allow that breaker to trip. I can tell you, I've never seen one of these trip a breaker, and have replaced a few of them from grounded compressors, but they never trip the breaker because that inverter is so smart and so fast, it doesn't allow it to even trip. It knows it's bad already. Okay, so if you go out there looking for one and you've got inverter faults, not only checking the inverter, and we're going to teach you how to do that today, but we want to check that compressor also. Pull the plug off, turn the power off. Yep, peg to ground, and then across each leg. Okay. So that being said, for our Copeland scroll compressors and our LG and our highly rotary, it's a single phase compressor. So we check it just the normal way, right? Okay, common start and run and everything, 1.7, 1.3 should end. Our start and run should end up to the sum of those other two, right? Okay, so it's not a 3-phase, it's a single phase compressor. So don't get them mixed up and thinking, well, that highly rotary, it's a 3-phase. Boy, my things are all wrong. I got a bad compressor. No, it's just a single phase compressor. And we're going to show you how that works later on with that inverter drive. For all our 2-stage equipment, I've had calls here, had a couple of one here a week or two ago. It says, Mike, it says, I got a 105-pound suction and a 250 discharge, and it's just not cooling right. I can't get my temperatures and pressures right. I said, well, it's 2-stage. He says, yeah, I got a call for Y2. I said, well, is the solenoid pulling in? Well, I got a call for Y2. Well, how do you know the solenoid is working? Let's put our gauges on it, put our amp meter on our compressor. So if we're calling for Y2 already, and we pull that 24-volt wire going off to that solenoid, we should see a 25% decrease in amperage and pressure drop. If we don't, we probably have a solenoid in a compressor that's not working. If we plug it back in and you don't see any amp change or pressure change, you have a bad solenoid inside that compressor. So if it's the Copeland, what do you have to do to fix it? Hold on a second, though. But just because it didn't, could our rectifier be bad going into the side of that compressor? Could be. The plug, right. Okay, so we need to make sure we pull it off and see. Doesn't mean that solenoid is bad, but first of all, the only other way to check it, you really can't test the rectifier inside. There's no way to test the rectifier itself. Get another one, because I've only seen maybe one where the solenoid was bad inside the compressor and the compressor had to be replaced. Maybe 2. It just doesn't happen, okay? So more than likely, it's the rectifier. But just because on the side of the compressor right here, in that plug, in the plug, okay? So get a new harness with the plug on it and replace it. That'll probably take care. If that doesn't fix it, well, then you got to replace the compressor. Unlike the LG, if we do that test and it doesn't work, we can unscrew it and go get one and plug a new one right on there, right? And we'll know whether that one's working or not, okay? So we can tell if that one's working. Now, could this one actually get something in it and stick to where it's not functioning? Yeah, it could, but typically not. Typically, that's not what's happened, okay? All right, we're going to go over some equipment overview, some drive components and wiring diagrams, and talk about running diagnostics with the app and the EcoNet, okay? So what is an inverter system, okay? I'm going to spit off some engineer stuff, okay? A compressor powered by simulated AC sine wave from an inverter that can electronically vary compressor speed. That had to have been printed by an engineer, right? Okay. Really, what we're doing is we're varying the hertz to that compressor. Just like a VFD drive, 60 hertz on the VFD drive is 100%, right? And if we go and turn the hertz down on that VFD drive to 55%, that blower goes, we slow it down to 50, it goes slower. Same thing. It's just varying it the whole time, okay, is what that basically is. in plain language from a Louisiana boy for me to understand. You know what I'm saying? Varying compressor speeds varies the refrigeration flow, and varying refrigerant flow varies system capacity. So we talked about that single stage compressor runs at 3,600 RPM, and this variable speed will run from 1,200 to 7,000 RPM. And we're going to look at why variable speed in a typical, we're going to talk about our typical summer day, but our winter is down here also, right? Okay. We have low temperatures in the evening, and as we go through and come up in the morning, the temperature in the summertime comes up, peaks during the day, and then goes back down. With our single speed fixed compressor running at 3,600 RPMs right here, this is where we run at. So we're running at 3,600 RPMs even though we're down here at these low temperatures during the day. Okay. With our full variable, though, once we get up here, then we can only reach so much capacity with our 3,600 RPM compressor. With our fully variable speed compressor, we can go up to that 120 so we can meet more of a demand. Kind of shows it here. This is where our energy savings is. Instead of being up here at 3,600, we're running down here at 1,400 or so RPM, maybe 1,200 down here in the middle of the night. We're not using as much energy, and we're maintaining that temperature to within 1 degree of desired temperature on that EcoNet controller. So that's where we're maintaining our comfort level at. Okay. And as we get up during the day, we go above that threshold of capacity for that fixed speed compressor at 3,600, and now we can go up past that and hopefully keep up with the demand during the day going forward, okay, and maintain that comfort level within 1 degree. Kind of a comparison here with our set point, our variable speed compressor. You can see how close that green line there goes to our set temperature within 1 degree. Very energy efficient. The two-stage control gives us a little bit more of a swing here, right? So we could have a little bit, not as quite as much comfort and energy savings, because now we're going from 1 degree, maybe up to 2 or 3 degrees swing, right? So we're still more energy efficient than that fixed speed compressor down here, okay? But we're not controlling the comfort as much or the energy efficient. Still energy efficient more than the fixed speed, but not quite as good as the variable speed, okay? So if someone wants, you usually get them good, better, and best. Your two-stage maybe is probably your better, and your fully variable is your best, okay? This kind of shows you what our single stage is, our drop-off from our two-stage, and our fully variable speed, and maintaining our temperature control down here. Okay, this is something new this year for our line set chart, okay? If you remember, if you've been doing Ring for a while, they have always said you can never, ever, ever, never use an 1.1/8 line set. Well, guess what? You can now. Only on a 5-ton. Only on a 5-ton. Okay? The biggest part of that is they wanted to make sure the bigger suction line that you have, line sets that you have, the velocity of that refrigerant flowing through that line is not as fast. So they want to make sure that they get the oil returned back to that compressor. That was their main objective of not wanting to use 1.1/8. But they've had some pushback over different jobs and different things like this, people complaining. So they are allowing an 1.1/8. But there's a caveat to that, because if you read the line set sizing instructions, it tells you you're supposed to use the smallest line set available. This really saves you from you going to that house that has 1.1/8 already run in the wall for a normal change out. Before you had to change it to 7/8. Now they're just saying you don't have to, basically. If you're installing a new line set, you need to follow the line set requirements and put 3/8 and 7/8 if that's what you need for that line set, okay, to make it run properly, and depending on how far away it is from your unit, okay, basically is what they're saying. So still read your installation instructions, but if it's already in the existing home, now if it's in the existing home and it's 150 feet away in a commercial thing, you might want to look at it, because then depending on whether the unit's above or below the air handler, you may have to have P-traps in it every so far. This is our mid-tier controller panel here. This is a Regal drive, a big bright red thing here that Regal makes for our mid-tier units here. You will see some changes. This is inverter driven, up to 70%. If it doesn't maintain temperature up to that amount, we go to a contactor, and capacitor, and line voltage. What's the one thing we don't ever want to do that we've heard before? Don't push the contactor in. If you push that contactor in, you're going to get a burnt spot right here. Okay? So we don't want to do that. Never.
Quick. Smoke comes out.
Smoke, yep, can't put smoke back in. All right? One of the other changes that they've made on the mid-tier units, we used to have the little white terminal block over here in the corner that every time you screwed it in there, it broke. Well, they really have a mean terminal block in here now. Okay? So that's a lot better. I really like that terminal block. Our UODC board is here. Like I said, this board will fit the 15, 16, and 18. It's all the same board. So we can have one board on our truck, put it in, use our app, and program it to what we need it to be, 15, 16, or 18. Okay, we don't have to have multiple boards. We don't have to have multiple memory cards and stuff like that. We program it from our phone. Okay? Don't push the contactor in. This is our inverter board. This is our fan input. This is our brushless DC fan motor. I had one the other day that I had to send back, first one that they had seen, but the brushless DC fan motor shorted out and burnt the board right here. Okay, so they hadn't seen it either, so we sent it back. I haven't heard anything back from them, but it did happen. Okay, something happened somewhere. This is where we have our high pressure switch up here. Our Modbus cable runs from here. The controls from here, runs from here over here to our control board that tells the inverter drive what to do. Our compressor outputs here, our inputs here. This board is really hard to diagnose. Okay, I'm gonna go through it. You got power coming in up here. You got power coming out here. Board's good. Power coming in, no power coming out. Board's bad. It's really rough. It's really rough. I will tell you, if you see right here next to these fuses, they've had a couple in the field that we've heard about where they were getting an inverter fault. Okay, the system would not run. Brand new out of the box inverter fault. And they happened to notice when it started to run, they saw a little arc. Well, those fuses were just a little bit too close together. So they turned the power off, let it de-energize, took a screwdriver and just kind of bent them over just to get a little bit further apart, fired up and ran fine. So just in case you have that, just look in that area and make sure that they're not touching. Probably just getting what got pushed on the board and it didn't get in the right spot exactly. The heat sink on the back of this inverter drive gets hot. So it's got a heat sink on the back of it. Dirt daubers do not live here. So if you're doing maintenance and you're washing that inside of that unit out, you can wash the back. It's got a gasket. It's not going to get water in here. Make sure you clean that out also. If you get high inverter temps, that might be something to look at. The wiring diagram is the same for every mid-tier. The only difference between a straight cool and a heat pump is you have a reversing valve. Everything else is the same. This is that outdoor stat that I told you about that they had the alarm, did not have the alarm on, but it was not getting an outdoor temperature on the EcoNet. That's where it is. Okay. Charge mode, we're going to put everything in charge mode when we put our gauges on it, right? That's on the EcoNet. If you don't have an EcoNet, you're going to put it in charge mode through the app, in heat charge or cool charge, okay? You need to have your gauges hooked up to it. Of course you would. How are you going to add refrigerant? But I tell you that because this is misleading. You see the screen that shows you? You can watch your pressures and temperatures. Unfortunately, you can't. They haven't fixed this snafu yet. Because when you go into charge mode and you put it in charge mode on the app, on the phone, the screen says, leaving this screen will terminate charge mode. Well, how the hell am I supposed to look at this if I don't leave the screen? They're supposed to be fixing it, okay? So you can. So you put it, if you don't have an EcoNet, you have to put it in charge mode on your app, then use your gauges to check your charge with, okay? Should be able to do it both ways, but you can't right now until they fix it. This is our high-tier control board. It's made by Emerson. Same people that made the boards for our 17s and 20s. Okay. Basically the same board. Power in, power out, drive is good. And one other thing that you can check on this one is it's got DC bus terminals right here that you can check your DC output bus on that board. So if you have 240 volts, whatever voltage you have going in AC, it's 1.4 times the amount of DC voltage coming out. So if we have 240 going in up here, DC voltage should be around 330, 340 volts DC. And you'll know that you have the proper DC voltage coming out. All right? The only difference in the high tier is the reversing valve. Wiring all is the same. Pressure switches and everything are all the same spots. The only difference is if it's a heat pump, you have a reversing valve hooked up. If you don't, great cool, you don't have one. The high tier charging procedures, we have to have it in charge mode. So the high tier, we're going to have it in charge mode. We don't want to put it in charge mode on the contractor app. Okay, we want to use the EcoNet. If you have an EcoNet, we want to use the EcoNet for charge mode. Okay, charge mode is required. We're going to put that in there. Charge mode is required. We're going to talk about our control panel for our base tier heat pumps. That has not changed. Same board. No difference, okay? Still has our pressures on here, our little chart on here as to what our flash codes are for normal operation, ambient sensor, off and on, what our flash codes are. This board has not changed in the last couple of years. Same board, okay? Defrost, if that unit goes, before that unit can go into defrost, it's got to have a temperature below 35 degrees outside, and it's got to have that temperature 35 degrees below for 34 minutes, and then a temperature difference between the outdoor and the indoor with an algorithm before it sends that unit into defrost. And we'll show you in a little bit how we can put it into demand defrost so we can check it to make sure that it's working properly, that it will go into defrost, okay? Our defrost cycle is the control will enter a 30-second off delay for the compressor. Outdoor fan and reversing valve are de-energized. 24 volts is energized to the D wire. So we bring on some auxiliary heat for Granny so she didn't get cold air blown on her when we go into cooling mode outside, right? Pretty much the same for our base tier, our mid tier, and our high tier that we're going to go over here. Same defrost cycle. Now, this is our base tier heat pump. Remember I said it's 2-stage now? You're just going to have a blue wire running from the solenoid on the side of that compressor hanging inside the cabinet. It's not connected to the board. You're just going to have Y, red and common, and O and D. Okay? Now, the thing is, there's 2 blue wires. The reversing valve wire is a light blue wire, and the second stage solenoid wire is a dark blue wire. And of course, they put all of these in a bundle together. Okay? And it doesn't really tell you anywhere, so you have to trace the wire out to figure it out. Now, I have heard, contractor told me in Gulfport that he installed one the other day and the blue wire had a silver stripe on it now. So I don't know. I haven't seen it. So if you open up one and it does, let us know. Because that's what he said. He said, well, this one had it was blue with a silver stripe on it for the second stage solenoid. Okay? So just let us know.
Like I had one last week, I actually had a sticker on it.
Oh, it did? Actually, I got a sticker on it now? Okay. So they're trying to do something. Okay, instead of just have 2 blue wires in there, and not tell you anything. Good. Would it have a silver stripe?
I don't remember if it had a
Silver stripe or not? Okay.
It was a different blue than the other one.
Well, the solenoid is a dark blue, and the reversing valve is a light blue wire. But it's 2 blue wire. You know what I mean? It gets,
Like I said, it was a big sticker.
okay. Okay. Good to know. So our 15 and 16 SEER AZs, our new units that we have. Okay. Their features variable speed operation from 45 to 70% or 100% line capacity, line voltage capacity. Okay. 3-speed operation when installed with a 24-volt 2-stage stack. Well, I'm just from Louisiana. I went to school in West Monroe. And when you say 3-speed operation with a 2-stage, that don't make sense to me. So we're going to look at that in a minute, kind of explain that a little bit further. You must use, when diagnosing these systems, we must use, If we have an EcoNet, you want to look at the EcoNet for diagnostics, and you want to look at your phone app for diagnostics. You may have some alarms in the phone app that you don't have on the EcoNet, and you could have some on the EcoNet that you don't have on the phone app. Okay. Now, if you have a 24-volt system thermostat, then you have to just go off what's on the app, right? But if you have both, you need to check them in both places. Current alarms and history of alarms. Okay? Current and history of alarms. And we never, never, never clear the history of alarms. Ever. Never leave it in there. Never clear it out. Leave it in there always. This is what our board looks like here. This is all of our sensors, suction temperatures, liquid line temperature, suction transducer, liquid line transducer. We have calculators for these to help you diagnose them in our Coburn's Connect app. Another thing that I didn't show you yet for these, how many of you have needlepoint probes? If you don't have needlepoint probes, go get them. Okay? If you call me to help you work on diagnose one of these units, I'm going to ask you, do you have needlepoint probes? If you say no, I'm going to say, I hate to say this, but you need to go get a pair and come back so we can troubleshoot it. Because I promise you, the size of the tips that you have that are just a regular probes are way bigger than these, and you're never going to get them in the holes that we need to get into. And even with these, it's a pain in the butt. So if these barely work, the regular ones aren't going to work at all. And wrapping a wire around it and sticking it in there, that's not going to cut it. Okay? So you need to get some of these. They're 10 or 15 bucks. I don't know what they are at the branches have them. I got these off Amazon, I'll tell you. So they're really inexpensive, okay? Because they do get broke. You do lose them sometimes, So get you some of those. On the outdoor units, on the boards, and the indoor, you have a BLE light right here. That's for our Bluetooth operation. If it's flashing, it tells you a Bluetooth connection is available. If you connect to it with your phone, it's going to go solid green. The other two, for cool and heat, it flashes once for every 10% capacity called for. So if it flashes seven times, you got 70%. If it flashes 5 times, it's calling for 50%. Okay? If you have an EcoNet thermostat, all you need are 4 wires anywhere, from the thermostat to the air handler or furnace, and from the furnace or air handler to the outdoor unit. All you need is 4 wires, no matter whether it's straight cool, 2-stage, or heat pump. That's all you need with the EcoNet thermostat. Okay? If you run a 24-volt legacy stat, if it's a heat pump, you're going to need 7 wires from the thermostat to the furnace or air handler, or 6 wires if it's straight cool from the thermostat to the furnace or air handler. But going outside from the furnace or air handler, you still only need 4 wires. Even though you're not running a communicating thermostat, the outdoor and the indoor are still going to communicate to each other. So all you're going to hook up is RC, E1, and E2 from the outdoor to the indoor. RC, E1, and E2 from outdoor to indoor. They're going to communicate to each other. They're going to talk back and forth. But your thermostat is going to be a regular stat, and that's where you need your 7 or your 6 wires. Okay? But the 2 pieces of equipment are still going to talk back and forth to each other, even though you don't have a communicating thermostat on it. Okay? So, saves you some wire there. All you need are 4 wires going outside for the 15, 16, or 18 SEER communicating equipment. Okay? We talked about commissioning of the outdoor. If you have an outdoor unit, you're going to commission it with the app outside, and it's going to go through and ask you everything that you want to do with it. If you have a mid-tier EcoNet thermostat, this is how it's going to operate. Some people have asked us this question. So from 0 to 45% is going to ramp up to 30 seconds for 45%. And then from that 45% to 70%, it's going to sit there and modulate just like that fully variable speed control compressor, up and down. That's why we have to lock it into charge mode if we're looking, when we put our gauges on it, so we have a fixed speed, okay? But in between there, it will run at 45 to 70% modulating and maintaining that temperature to within 1 degree if it's on an EcoNet. After a certain time base, like 12 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes max at low speed, and it hasn't reached desired temperature, it would drop off of the inverter drive and would go to that contactor and capacitor and go to line voltage to 100%. Reason why this is not fully variable speed, because once it goes up to this, it stays here till it reaches the desired temperature, and once it does that, it turns all the way off and starts over. Where the fully variable speed goes up and down and goes back and forth and up and down from 120 to 15, from 15 to 120, and it goes back and forth all day long. This doesn't. Once it goes to line voltage, it has to cut off, reset, and start over again. Okay? Now, we talked about that 3-speed, 2-stage stat a while ago. If you're putting it on a regular 24-volt legacy thermostat, just like what's over there on the wall, compressor ramps up to 45% within 30 seconds. First speed. Then, between 5 and 12 minutes, it goes from 45 to 65%. Second speed, first stage. Okay? You see where the confusion kind of gets in? It's not a 3-stage compressor. It's 3 speeds, but 2 stages. So, from 0 to 45% is speed 1, and then from here to here is speed 2. It's not variable in between. It ramps up to this speed for 30 seconds, and then after 30 seconds it goes to this speed. And it's staying right there straight. Running at that one speed, 2,450 RPM, I think. Then, after it sits there and runs between 5 and 12 minutes, 20 minutes max at 45%, if the temperature is not reached, it goes from line voltage again onto the contactor and goes up to 100%, second stage, or third speed. So it's really just a 2-stage compressor is the way I look at it, almost. A variable 2-stage compressor. First stage is variable, second stage isn't. Kind of the way I look at it. But it works, and it's still more energy efficient than the 14 SEER. Okay? Gives us more temperature control. This is the difference between the two. This is where your EcoNet savings is, and this is where you lose some savings here between the fixed speed and the variable. You have more comfort control here than you do with the fixed speed. You don't have as much of a temperature swing. Okay? High-speed operation. Had some of this during the summertime. Some customers would call and say, hey, it's 110 degrees outside, but my system's running real good. And I got it 72 degrees in my house. Well, great. She said, but it's running high speed. You can hear it outside. It's just rolling. It's in high speed. Why is it in high speed? Because I'm maintaining within my 1 degree. That's because on that outdoor stat, if it sees above 95 degrees, or if it's a heat pump, if it sees below 32 degrees, it's automatically going to go to high speed. Nothing I can do about it. That's in the demand-based logic that they've built for the system. Some kind of fixes for the outdoor part of it was the sun was shining right on the unit, so contractors makes kind of a little shield or took that outdoor temperature stat and kind of moved it around to the shade to the out, so it didn't run in high speed all the time. Okay, when that temperature got up and that sun was blazing down on it this past summer. We're going to talk about a pressure relief valve that's on the mid-tier systems because these units will not start if they have greater than a 20 psi pressure difference between suction and discharge. They will not start. Okay, and after 5 minutes, if it gets a call, it's going to check, and if it does, it'll open that solenoid to equalize the two lines, and I'll show you in another picture. The 15, 16, and 18s have low ambient controlling. So I know some of you guys work in the school district here, so you got a lot of heat load inside, So this is going to work. Outdoor fan will cycle on at 80, off at 64 or 40 psi. So if you're checking pressures on it or something, just be aware it's going to act just like a fan cycle switch on and off in low ambient cooling condition. If you do any zoning at all, The 15 and 16 SEER systems are 2 zones only, and it has to have a bypass. 2 zones only, and it has to have a bypass. You cannot put, yes, sir.
Why is that on the 15 and 16?
Because what are we trying to, what on that highly compressor, what was the biggest thing that they jumped out at you and said that we don't want on that compressor? We don't want compressor flood back, right? And I'm sorry, but most people in our industry do not know how to do zoning. And REAM has recognized that fact and says we want to protect this compressor from liquid flood back. So we're still going to give, you only can put 2 zones and you have to have a bypass. You know, that still comes down to the contractor. If he puts a 5-ton system in and that homeowner says, well, I got a bonus room. Oh, I can zone it. And you're going to put 5 tons of air on 2 zones and have one 12-inch duct or 10-inch duct run into 2 outlets on a 400 square foot room. You still have to size the duct correctly, okay? You still have to size the zones correctly. But they're trying to limit that to, and if you put more than 3 zones on it, 3 or 4 zones, they're not going to cover warranty if they find out about it. It's not going to happen, okay? If you need more than 2 zones, you need to use the variable speed 18. You can put up to 5 or 6 on that. You still have to size the zones correctly, though. Okay? It's still up to the contractor to size the zones correctly. Okay? Oil return. After 2 hours of accumulative runtime, the compressor goes into an oil return speed of 2,400 RPMs. If it's running on the drive, if it's running on line voltage, it will run up to 3,600 RPMs for 2 minutes to bring back oil to the system. We talked about defrost initiation, the same with the on the mid tier as it is the low tier that we talked about, the 14 SEER. No difference. The only difference is on the mid tier, if it goes into defrost while it is running on the drive, it's going to ramp up to 2,450 RPM. If it's running on line voltage, it'll ramp up to 3,600 RPM when it goes into defrost. So if it's running on the drive, it won't shift and go to high stage to defrost. It's going to defrost on the drive. This is just a little note for the diagnostic codes we talked about. An A is an alarm, and the sys calls the system shutdown. If it's a T alarm, it's an alarm, but it's a non-critical fault, and the system will still run. Okay. If it's an O, it's an outdoor code. An A for air handler, F for furnace, C for communication, S for system, Z for zoning. This is our test mode. You can come in here on this test mode on the button here. If you press it real quick, it will clear any time delays that you have on the board, except for one. This is where we're talking about the highly compressor. Which one do y'all think it won't clear? That pressure differential. If it's still got greater than 20 psi differential between suction and discharge, it will not clear that alarm.
It'll still keep it shut down until it equalizes.
It'll still keep it shut down until it equalizes. Correct. You can come in here and press it for 3 seconds, and it'll do a bump test. The system will come on and run for 1 minute and go through all the parameters to make sure that it will run correctly. Defrost, if you hold it down for 5 seconds, you can force a demand defrost into the system. So you hold that button down for 5 seconds, and it will go into demand defrost. Okay? Everybody get your phones out and take a picture of this. Everybody get your phones out. Everybody take a picture of this screen. If you need to get up and come up here and get closer, come do that. We're going to talk about communication issues, troubleshooting, communicating errors. Because 99.999% of the time, it's a wiring problem. It is a wiring problem. We're going to show you how to troubleshoot that, okay? Before we get into troubleshooting it, you get an extra class today. This is Mike's 101 class for troubleshooting wires or checking wiring connections. It's a free class. It doesn't cost you anything extra today, okay? So if I tell you, okay, you need to go through and check all your wiring. Mike, I already have. This is what checking all of your wiring already includes. It means going in, taking your screwdriver, unscrewing this E1 wire, pulling the wire out and looking at it and going, okay, I got it stripped back, there's no insulation under there, and putting it back, and doing every one like that, okay? It means going to the thermostat, pulling that controller off of the wall, and checking all of those wires in behind the connection to make sure that insulation is stripped back from the wire. I tell you this because last year I drove to Tennessee with a communication error. I've done it twice. Contractor said, we checked all of that. We done that. I get there, I pull the controller off of the wall. I looked, I couldn't see bare wire on the common wire going behind, into the little hole into the base plate. I took my screwdriver, pushed it in, pulled that white wire out. Do you think the insulation was stripped back all the way? Nope. Took my knife, stripped the wire back, pushed it in there, pushed the controller back on the wall. Communication alarm went away. I drove 7 hours for that. It happens. I went to another one. Same thing. Pull the thermostat off the wall, everything good. This is a heat pump. Go into the attic, pull the door off to the unit, grab the bundle of wires, the common wires, there's 3 or 4 in it. Just grabbed it from the wire nut, and a wire fell out. Looked at the contractor. Took the wire nut off, got some strippers, stripped them all back, put them back in there, put them back in that wire nut together, turned the power back on, communication alarm went away. If you check these connections, you have to do that. You can't just look at them. You've got to pull them out. If they're in wire nuts, take the wire nut off, bring you a new wire nut, strip the wires back, and redo the connection. Because if you don't, it's going to bite you in the butt. I promise you. I won't say I've never had a bad control board, and I'm only going to say that because I won't say I've never had one. I don't remember having one, but I'm sure that Jody may have found a bad control board before, and we're going to talk about how to diagnose that. Let's go how to troubleshoot this, okay? If we have let's say we have an outdoor communication error, okay? It says here, all devices disconnected, power applied to control. We're going to start on the outdoor board. So that means all devices disconnected. We're going to disconnect E1 and E2, power applied to control. So we need to leave R and C powered up, okay? Because we need power applied to it. We're going to take our meter out. We're DC volts, and we're going to check between E1 and E2 on the board. We should have 3 volts DC. We'll go between E1 and common. We should have 3 volts DC. We're going to go between E2 and common. We should have basically nothing. That tells us the board is good. We know our board is good then, okay? So we're going to connect, devices connected, power applied. So we're going to put E1 and E2 back on the board. Now we're going to check. Between E1 and E2, we should have between 1 and 3.5 volts pulsating. So it might go between 1 and 3.5 back and forth. So it's just pulsating, okay? Between E1 and E2, we should have between 2.5 and 3.5 volts DC, pulsating. So it may change. Between E2 and common, we should have basically 0. Well, all that checks out. Well, Mike, it says I have an outdoor communication error. Don't stop here. Now we're going to go indoors and do the same thing inside. Well, E1 and E2 off, we're going to check and make sure that our board is good. Okay, let's say if we find something where we have no volts DC between E1 and E2. What do we have? Bad board. So let's say that it all checks out though. Our board is good. And we connect E1 and E2 back up, and E1 and E2 checks out, but E1 into common has nothing on it. So what's wrong? We have an outdoor communication error. We know our boards are good, right? So we have a wiring problem. But where is it?
Inside somewhere.
Where?
Thermostat.
Or could it be between the furnace and the outdoor? How do we check that? Now how do we check it? How do we know? I'll tell you. You go take that controller off of the wall in the hallway, get you a short piece of wire, and take it up. You take it outside. I would take it indoors. Take it indoors and connect it straight to that furnace or air handler. Okay, you don't connect the wires going to the thermostat downstairs, but you connect it straight to that furnace or air handler with the outdoor hooked up. If you bring it up and you don't have a communication error, where's your problem? The thermostat wire, right? Because now we just took that out of the circuit, right? We just have the short piece, brand new. If the communication wire error goes away, it's between there and the thermostat. If you still have the communication error, where's the problem? Between the indoor and the outdoor. Okay? 99.9 guys, 80% of the time, it's in wiring. It's a wiring problem somewhere if it's a communication error. Almost all the time, it's a wiring problem. Okay? I have learned from when I worked at a company in Baton Rouge and they started installing these, that anytime we put one in, a 17 or 20 SEER, we ran new control wire. It just saved time. It saved callbacks. Because that wire that has run that heat pump with that 8 wire going outside for 30 years has worked perfectly. Never had a problem. But now it's been in that house 20 or 30 years, and what happens to the insulation on it after that? Just like anything. It becomes brittle or dry. You don't know where it's kinked or pinched in the wall.
Do you need
Okay?
shielded cable on that?
You do not, it does, I'm sure you will, it does not require shielded cable. Where I would tell you, I would think about shielded cable is in these newer homes. If you're doing any of these Alexa, lights on, TV on, lights dim.
Smart home.
Yeah, those smart homes, yeah, I would consider, you would say on any inverter system, communicating system, I would think about running a shielded cable, okay? But typically, you don't have to. Typically, you don't have to, okay? It's just those one-offs. I think Jody had one in Texas. There was a cell phone tower in the backyard, and every day at 3 or 3:30, they had communication problems. And there was a cell phone tower in the field behind the house. Don't know what was going on with it, okay? But most of the time, it's a wiring problem if you have a communication error, okay? Line operating voltages. The line operating needs to be between 197 and 253, okay? If you get above 265, it's going to throw an over voltage. Below 187, it's going to throw an under voltage, okay? I've had some people, hey, I've replaced this blower motor 3 times. Is 265 volts too much for it? Yeah. Well, they call the electric company. They say they're within their 10%. Well, I can't keep replacing blower motors. They're not going to warranty them. I'm sorry. They're going to have to get an electrician, get a buck loose transformer or something, and reduce that voltage coming into the house if the electric company won't do anything. So our equipment, nobody's equipment is going to run on voltage like that. Okay? It's always going to have problems. Okay? If the compressor reaches 235 degrees for more than 30 seconds on a single call, it's going to slow that compressor down, reduce the RPMs until the temperature falls below 200 degrees, and then it will ramp back up. If it does it 3 times in that same call for air conditioning, it's going to lock it out. We have a high pressure switch on here, has an automatic reset, 610 and 490. Okay. We've got to ensure this is that pressure relief valve that we talked about. Less than 20 psi difference between suction and discharge. If it doesn't see it after that 5-minute off delay, it will open that valve to equalize the pressure. If you still have a greater than 20 psi difference, you have a restriction somewhere. Okay? You need to start looking at restrictions. Okay? Outdoor tubing we've talked about is going to 7mm tubing outside. Okay? We talked about some of our drives to fail on line sync. Overcurrent 3 times it'll lock it out. Over temp 3 times we talked about. An open phase. Contactor not closing. Lock rotor, it gives it 6 times to try on lock rotor. I don't know why 6, but it does. Before it'll lock it out on lock rotor. The high tier boards, just remember, with no memory cards anymore, okay? No dip switches, everything. This is what our Bluetooth antenna looks like here. okay? Let's say if it becomes damaged or something like that, if you get close enough to it, it still will work, okay? You usually have to take the door off, but it should get you working so you can troubleshoot the system, okay? 18 gauge control thermostat wire. Cannot use phone cord or anything like that. 18 gauge thermostat wire. It does not have to be shielded. I hate to say this, I'm going to say it apprehensively. On an 18 SEER system, for emergencies only, you can put a 24 volt thermostat on there if you have to. And the only reason why I'd ever see you would have to is if you had a bad EcoNet controller and you didn't have one on the truck, and they don't normally go bad. I just haven't seen them where the EcoNet went bad itself and nothing else, okay? So, but if you do, you hook it up and it runs at nominal tonnage, and you gotta have 5 or 6, you gotta have 6 or 7 wires depending on what it is outside to send outside. You can't just run it off of 4, and it'll hook up at 2, 3, 4, and 5 ton nominal tonnage. Just
Do
going
you
to
have
run
to
it at
install
6
surge
feet.
protectors in the system?
I wouldn't be putting a system in without surge protection, inside or outside. I don't care whose it is, or what SEER rating it is, or anything. Because we've got all these ECM motors in them anymore. We've got computer boards in any manufacturer, Goodman, Carrier, Train, all of it. It should all have surge protection. And a lot of people, they'll put it outside, but they don't put it inside. Okay? And inside, that's the brains of your stuff. That's what's telling everything to come on and off, you know?
So you were saying earlier though about this unit, high voltage, low voltage kicking itself out. So how does that work? Or if you
This is a surge protector. It doesn't, it can sit there at 265 volts and still run. It's a surge.
It don't hit that much.
Now, depending on what surge protection you get, we have some at the branches. There's little control boxes, and you can set up parameters
voltage, yeah.
and what voltages you want it to protect it on to trip it out. And it also keeps a log up to 300 volts, because you know some of the protectors, once they go out, they're out, and you don't know that they're out because they're automatic reset, but they don't work anymore until you go out there. So it could be off for 6 months, and then people not have any protection and no way to know unless they went outside and saw the green light went from green to red, right? They just don't know. They don't know the surge protector has been used. Okay, it took the surge, but now it's no longer in the circuit. It's not it's not working anymore.
When are you gonna start billing them into the units?
When everybody else does. Because what does that do to the unit? Now my unit just went up $100.
Well, I mean, it
or
don't matter, you
$200.
still gotta go up on your price, you gotta put one on.
But they're leaving
You
that.
got
They're
to
leaving
have
that
a
to the con. You know, but if everybody would do that, that's why you don't see crankcase heaters on units anymore, right? You know why? Because everybody's reducing cost. And if everybody else would, if everybody agreed to put crankcase heaters on, everybody would put crankcase heaters on. But they can't come to agreements like that. They're all trying to make their cheaper, the units less expensive, so you buy from them instead of the other guy. We talked about our low ambient cooling outside. We talked about our defrost initiation in our high temp. It's the same for the mid-tier, high-tier. It's all the same sequence, and you can put it in man defrost by holding that test button down for 5 seconds. Okay. And our high-tier troubleshooting, same voltages here between 197 and 253. 265 it throws an alarm, and 187 it throws an alarm. This is where we're going to go through and show you, I'm going to show you a portion here on how to reprogram these boards. There's 2 ways to do it. We're going to mention one but teach you the other, okay? Because we have found through the summer, this is the best efficient way to do it. We'll tell you now, if you install this 15, 16, or 18 SEER equipment, it could have been sitting on the shelf a whole year by now, right? How many updates to that software in that board has come out since then? What do y'all think? Probably a bunch, right? Probably, or even if it's been on the shelf 6 months or 3 months, how many updates have come out? If you put any of this equipment in, I would recommend to you to update the boards prior to installing them. With the 15 and 16 SEER, if you install a 3-ton or a 5-ton, you have to update the outdoor board. Because I can tell you there's been updates to those two pieces of equipment, the 3-ton and the 5-ton, 15 and 16 SEER straight cool or heat pump, okay? You would open up your app, get your Ruud contractor app open. We would come into service up here, go to service and repair, okay? They have selected the outdoor unit on this one. The outdoor unit has come up, but we do not want to select that unit, okay? We'll tell you what happens if you do. If you select that unit up here, it connects to that board. Your phone downloads the software from that board onto your phone. If you're changing the board, you change the board out, put the new board on, reconnect to it, and then it uploads the software that was on the old board from your phone to the new board. Because all the new boards come blank. But what if the reason why we're having problems with that old board was because of the software in the board? Or if I have a newer update to the software for that board, why wouldn't I want to put the new software update in the new board?
You just contaminated that.
I just contaminated that one. So what we're going to teach you is what we call the dead board procedure, okay? Like if you go up to the board and there's no lights on it, it's burned up. Well, you can't connect to it, right? So you got to start fresh from scratch. That's another reason you have to have automatic updates on your app. So it automatically updates every night. You never have to worry about having the latest and greatest updates on your phone. Okay? So we're going to go here, select service and repair. You will see your outdoor unit here. Do not click on that. Go down to the bottom where it says I don't see my product. You want to select that. Because we can't see it, it's burned up anyway. We're going to pretend, right? You're going to see enter manually. Click enter manually. We're going to enter the serial number, including the W of that outdoor unit. And you can do this for the outdoor unit or the indoor unit. Doesn't matter. Same procedure. You're going to hit continue. If you have an Apple phone, this screen is going to come up first. If you have an Android, this screen comes up. I don't know why it does it differently. It just does. But if you have an Apple, it's going to verify. I want you to verify the model and serial number of the unit. Come down here, verify, and you click continue. Then you come to here, it tells you scan the motor part number or enter it manually. I'm going to tell you now, don't try scanning it, it's a pain in the butt. But you got to undo all 4 screws, you got to get down here, raise it up, get your arms up under there, get your phone folks trying to scan. It's just hard. Just enter it manually is the easiest way to do it. Enter your part number, your motor part number. It's going to be a 51208 50402. But if you notice on this right here, it says 0201. You only need the first 10 numbers. If you put that 01, it's going to say motor not found. So if you do that by chance, just take the last 2 numbers off. Okay? Because that's just another version of that part. That's not the real part number. That's just another version of that motor. Okay? Input that down here, hit continue, power down the unit, pull the disconnect, pull the little 24 volt plug, that green plug that we were talking about testing before off of there, we want to pull that off of there. We want to kill the 24 volts going to it. When the lights stop blinking on the board, then you can plug it back in. Okay? I had one the other day, guy called from West Monroe, hey, I got this alarm, I said do this. It started back up. He called me back, it didn't work. I said, you didn't leave the power off long enough. Huh? I'm telling you, you just unplugged it and you plugged it back in? Yeah. Wait till the lights go out. Wait till the lights go out and then do it. He did it, he called me back about 30 minutes later. Hey, that worked that time. Okay? So make sure when you unplug everything, the lights go out. Then when it does, plug it back in. We're going to, if you have a bad control board, change the board. But if we're just updating software, we're going to pretend we changed the board, right? Change the control board, power everything back up, hit continue. You're going to start a 15-second timer. When that timer ends, you're going to get this message. Replacement controls do not have serial numbers. Hit dismiss. Okay? Because if you put a new board in, it's blank, right? Doesn't have any serial numbers in it. It dismissed. Then you're gonna come up, I get some questions this, Bluetooth repair, which product do I connect to? I said, what do you see? I don't see nothing. Hold on just a second, give me a second here, okay? Oh, wait a minute, here it is. And it comes up EcoNet outdoor unit and it should have a serial number in there. This time I want you to select that serial number. And when you do that, it continues and it's going to come, you're going to see this. You may see it says, well, it says to pair. Pair your phone with it, hit pair. And then it'll start doing this, connecting to Bluetooth, updating settings, restarting control board. You may hear the board on clicking, lights going on and off, and clicking in the board. You listen, okay? Once it does that and finishes, you'll come to this screen, you're done. Okay? That's all you need to do to update the settings. So we have some air handlers out there in the field now that don't have incomplete blower data in them for the heat mode. They go in, turn the heat on, no heat comes on. Because it's got to see the blower motor running before it brings the heat strips on. So some of them got programmed without any blower speeds for heat. So you're going to go through and do this dead board program. Go through just like we did, with serial number in, powered it down, you know, leave it off for a few seconds, turn it back on, put everything in, and update that board, and then go try your heat, and it works. It's just because it didn't have any blower speeds in there for that. Okay? But I would recommend if you're putting any of this equipment in, since we've had a lot of updates, just update the board. You may not remember this today, but first time you call me, we walk through it on the phone, and we do it one time on the phone, then next time you'll be like, oh, I got this. And it don't take no time. It really doesn't take any time to do. 2 minutes at the most. So today we talked about installation and setup, diagnostics, service and repair, our QR codes, internet connection, whether you need it or Bluetooth. We talked about the LED blinking and solid lights. No memory cards anymore, right? We're all Bluetooth set up. Diagnostics with the EcoNet and the app. Service replacement, mid-tier wiring, high-tier thermostat wiring, using the EcoNet, using the app. We kind of went through all of that today.
let's go how to troubleshoot this, okay? If we have a let's say we have an outdoor communication error, okay? It says here, all devices disconnected, power applied to control. We're going to start on the outdoor board. So that means all devices disconnected. We're going to disconnect E1 and E2, power applied to control. So we need to leave R and C powered up, okay? Because we need power applied to it. We're going to take our meter out. We're DC volts, and we're going to check between E1 and E2 on the board. We should have 3 volts DC. We'll go between E1 and common. We should have 3 volts DC. We're going to go between E2 and common. We should have basically nothing. That tells us the board is good. We know our board is good then, okay? So we're going to connect, devices connected, power applied. So we're going to put E1 and E2 back on the board. Now we're going to check. Between E1 and E2, we should have between 1 and 3.5 volts pulsating. So it might go between 1 and 3.5 back and forth. So it's just pulsating, okay? Between E1 and E2, we should have between 2.5 and 3.5 volts DC, pulsating. So it may change. Between E2 and common, we should have basically 0. Well, all that checks out. Well, Mike, it says I have an outdoor communication error. Don't stop here. Now we're going to go indoors and do the same thing inside. Well, E1 and E2 off, we're going to check and make sure that our board is good. Okay, let's say if we find something where we have no volts DC between E1 and E2. What do we have? Bad board. So let's say that it all checks out though. Our board is good. And we connect E1 and E2 back up, and E1 and E2 checks out, but E1 into common has nothing on it. So what's wrong? We have an outdoor communication error. We know our boards are good, right? So we have a wiring problem. But where is it?
Common inside somewhere.
Where?
Thermostat.
Or could it be from between the furnace and the outdoor?
Yeah.
How do we check that? Now how do we check it? How do we know? I tell you. You go take that controller off of the wall in the hallway, get you a short piece of wire, and take it up. You take it outside. I would take it indoors. Take it indoors and connect it straight to that furnace or air handler. Okay, you don't connect the wires going to the thermostat downstairs, but you connect it straight to that furnace or air handler with the outdoor hooked up. If you bring it up and you don't have a communication error, where's your problem? The thermostat wire, right? Because now we just took that out of the circuit, right? We just have the short piece, brand new. If the communication wire error goes away, it's between there and the thermostat. If you still have the communication error, where's the problem? Between the indoor and the outdoor. Okay? 99.9 guys, 80% of the time, it's in wiring. It's a wiring problem somewhere if it's a communication error. Almost all the time, it's a wiring problem. Okay? I have learned from when I worked at a company in Baton Rouge and they started installing these, that anytime we put one in, a 17 or 20 SEER, we ran new control wire. It just saved time. It saved callbacks. Because that wire that has run that heat pump with that 8 wire going outside for 30 years has worked perfectly. Never had a problem. But now it's been in that house 20 or 30 years, and what happens to the insulation on it after that? Just like anything. It becomes brittle or dry. You don't know where it's kinked or pinched in the wall.
Do you need
Okay?
shielded cable on that?
You do not, it does, let me show you a little bit, it does not require shielded cable. Where I would tell you, I would think about shielded cable is in these newer homes. If you're doing any of these Alexa, lights on, TV on, lights dim.
Smart homes.
Yeah, those smart homes, yeah, I would consider, you would say on any inverter system, communicating system, I would think about running a shielded cable, okay? But typically you don't have to. Typically you don't have to, okay? It's just those one-offs. I think Jody had one in Texas. There was a cell phone tower in the backyard, and every day at 3 or 3:30 they had communication problems. And there was a cell phone tower in the field behind the house. Don't know what was going on with it, okay? But most of the time it's a wiring problem if you have a communication error, okay? Line operating voltages. The line operating needs to be between 197 and 253, okay? If you get above 265, it's going to throw an over voltage. Below 187, it's going to throw an under voltage, okay? I've had some people, hey, I've replaced this blower motor 3 times. Is 265 volts too much for it? Yeah. Well, they call the electric company, they say they're within their 10%. Well, I can't keep replacing blower motors. They're not going to warranty them, I'm sorry. They're going to have to get an electrician, get a buck loose transformer or something, and reduce that voltage coming into the house if the electric company won't do anything. So our equipment, nobody's equipment is going to run on voltage like that, okay? It's always going to have problems, okay? If the compressor reaches 235 degrees for more than 30 seconds on a single call, it's going to slow that compressor down, reduce the RPMs until the temperature falls below 200 degrees, and then it will ramp back up. If it does it 3 times in that same call for air conditioning, it's going to lock it out. Over current, 3 times it'll lock it out. Over temp, 3 times we talked about. An open phase, contactor not closing. Lock rotor, it gives it 6 times to try on lock rotor. I don't know why it's 6, but it does, before it'll lock it out on lock rotor. The high tier boards, just remember, with no memory cards anymore, okay? No dip switches, everything. This is what our Bluetooth antenna looks like here, okay? Let's say if it becomes damaged or something like that, if you get close enough to it, it still will work, okay? You usually have to take the door off, but it should get you working so you can troubleshoot the system, okay? 18 gauge control thermostat wire. Cannot use phone cord or anything like that. 18 gauge thermostat wire. It does not have to be shielded. I hate to say this, so I'm going to say it apprehensively. On an 18 SEER system, for emergencies only, you can put a 24 volt thermostat on there if you have to. And the only reason why I'd ever see you would have to is if you had a bad EcoNet controller and you didn't have one on the truck, and they don't normally go bad. I just haven't seen them where the EcoNet went bad itself and nothing else, okay? So, but if you do, you hook it up and it runs at nominal tonnage, and you got to have 5 or 6, you got to have 6 or 7 wires depending on what it is outside to send outside. You can't just run it off of 4, and it'll hook up at 2, 3, 4, and 5 ton nominal tonnage. Just
Do
going
you have
to
to install surge protectors on the system?
I wouldn't be putting a system in without surge protection, inside or outside. I don't care whose it is or what SEER rating it is or anything. Because we've got all these ECM motors in them anymore. We've got computer boards in any manufacturing, Goodman, Carrier, Train, all of it. It should all have surge protection. And a lot of people, they'll put it outside, but they don't put it inside. Okay? And inside, that's the brains of your stuff. That's what's telling everything to come on and off, you know?
So you were saying earlier though about this unit, high voltage, low voltage kicking itself out. So how does that work? Or if you
This is a surge protector. It doesn't. It can sit there at 265 volts and still run. It's a surge.
Don't hit that much.
Now, depending on what surge protection you get, we have some at the branches. There's little control boxes, and you can set up parameters and what voltages you want it to protect it on to trip it out. And it also keeps a log up to 300 faults, because you know some of the protectors, once they go out, they're out. And you don't know that they're out because they're automatic reset, but they don't work anymore until you go out there. So it could be off for 6 months, and then people not have any protection and no way to know unless they went outside and saw the green light went from green to red, right? They just don't know. They don't know the surge protector has been used. Okay, it took the surge, but now it's no longer in the circuit. It's not working anymore.
When are you gonna start billing them into the units?
When everybody else does. Because what does that do to the unit? Now my unit just went up $100.
Well, I mean, it
or
don't matter, you
$200.
still gotta go up on your price, you gotta put one on.
But they're leaving that,
You
they're
gotta
leaving that to the
put it.
con, but if everybody would do that, that's like, you don't see crankcase heaters on units anymore, right? You know why? Because everybody's reducing cost. And if everybody else would, if everybody agreed to put crankcase heaters on, everybody would put crankcase heaters on. But they can't come to, agreements like that. They're all trying to make their cheaper, the units less expensive, so you buy from them instead of the other guy. Okay? We talked about our low ambient cooling outside. We talked about our defrost initiation in our high temp. It's the same for the mid-tier, high-tier. It's all the same sequence, and you can put it in demand defrost by holding that test button down for 5 seconds. Okay. And our high-tier troubleshooting, same voltages here between 197 and 253. 265 it throws an alarm, and 187 it throws an alarm. Okay. So this is where we're going to go through and show you, I'm going to show you a portion here on how to reprogram these boards. There's 2 ways to do it. We're going to mention one but teach you the other. Okay? Because we have found through the summer, this is the best efficient way to do it. We'll tell you now, if you install this 15, 16, or 18 SEER equipment, it could have been sitting on the shelf a whole year by now, right? How many updates to that software in that board has come out since then? What do y'all think? Probably a bunch, right? Probably, or even if it's been on the shelf 6 months or 3 months, how many updates have come out? If you put any of this equipment in, I would recommend to you to update the boards prior to installing them. With the 15 and 16 SEER, if you install a 3-ton or a 5-ton, you have to update the outdoor board. Because I can tell you there's been updates to those 2 pieces of equipment. The 3-ton and the 5-ton. 15 and 16 SEER straight cool or heat pump. Okay? So we're going to go through this. You would open up your app, get your Ruud contractor app open. We come into service up here, go to service and repair. Okay? They have selected the outdoor unit on this one. The outdoor unit has come up. But we do not want to select that unit. Okay? We'll tell you what happens if you do. If you select that unit up here, it connects to that board. Your phone downloads the software from that board onto your phone. If you're changing the board, you change the board out, put the new board on, reconnect to it, and then it uploads the software that was on the old board from your phone to the new board. Because all the new boards come blank. But what if the reason why we're having problems with that old board was because of the software in the board? Or if I have a newer update to the software for that board, why wouldn't I want to put the new software update in the new board?
You just contaminated that one.
I just contaminated that one. So what we're going to teach you is what we call the dead board procedure. Okay? Like if you go up to the board and there's no lights on it, it's burned up. Well, you can't connect to it, right? So you got to start fresh from scratch. That's another reason you have to have automatic updates on your app. So it automatically updates every night. You never have to worry about having the latest and greatest updates on your phone. Okay? So we're going to go here, select service and repair. You will see your outdoor unit here. Do not click on that. Go down to the bottom where it says I don't see my product. You want to select that. Because we can't see it, it's burned up anyway. We're going to pretend, right? You're going to see enter manually. Click enter manually. We're going to enter the serial number, including the W of that outdoor unit. And you can do this for the outdoor unit or the indoor unit. Doesn't matter. Same procedure. You're going to hit continue. If you have an Apple phone, this screen is going to come up first. If you have an Android, this screen comes up. I don't know why it does it differently. It just does. But if you have an Apple, it's going to verify, I want you to verify the model and serial number of the unit. come down here, verify, and you click continue. Then you come to here, it tells you scan the motor part number or enter it manually. I'm going to tell you now, don't try scanning it, it's a pain in the butt. But you got to undo all 4 screws, you got to get down here, raise it up, get your arms up under there, get your phone folk trying to skip. It's just hard. Just enter it manually is the easiest way to do it. Enter your part number, your motor part number. It's going to be a 51208, 50402. But if you notice on this right here, it says 0201. You only need the first 10 numbers. If you put that 01, it's going to say motor not found. So if you do that by chance, just take the last 2 numbers off. Okay? Because that's just another version of that part. That's not the real part number. That's just another version of that motor. Okay? Input that down here, hit continue. Power down the unit. Pull the disconnect. Pull the little 24 volt plug, that green plug that we were talking about testing before off of there. We want to pull that off of there. We want to kill the 24 volts going to it. When the lights stop blinking on the board, then you can plug it back in. Okay? I had one the other day, guy called from West Monroe. Hey, I got this alarm. I said, do this. It started back up. He called me back, it didn't work. I said, you didn't leave the power off long enough. Huh? I'm telling you, you just unplugged it and you plugged it back in? Yeah. Wait till the lights go out. Wait till the lights go out and then do it. He did it. He called me back about 30 minutes later. Hey, that worked that time. Okay? So make sure when you unplug everything, the lights go out. Then when it does, plug it back in. We're going to, if you have a bad control board, change the board. But if we're just updating software, we're going to pretend we changed the board, right? Change the control board, power everything back up, hit continue. You're going to start a 15-second timer. When that timer ends, you're going to get this message. Replacement controls do not have serial numbers. Hit dismiss. Okay? Because if you put a new board in, it's blank, right? It doesn't have any serial numbers in it. Hit dismiss. Then you're going to come up, I get some questions this, Bluetooth repair, which product do I connect to? I said, what do you see? I don't see nothing. Hold on just a second. Give it a second here. Okay? Oh, wait a minute, here it is. And it comes up, EcoNet outdoor unit, and it should have a serial number in there. This time I want you to select that serial number. And when you do that, hit continue, and it's going to come, you're going to see this. You may see it says, well, it says to pair. Pair your phone with it, hit pair, and then it'll start doing this, connecting to Bluetooth, updating settings, restarting control board. You may hear the board on clicking, lights going on and off, and clicking in the board as you listen, okay? Once it does that and finishes, you'll come to this screen, you're done, okay? That's all you need to do to update the settings. So we have some air handlers out there in the field now that don't have incomplete blower data in them for the heat mode. They go in, turn the heat on, no heat comes on. Because it's got to see the blower motor running before it brings the heat strips on. So some of them got programmed without any blower speeds for heat. So you're going to go through and do this dead board program. Go through just like we did, with serial number in, powered it down, you know, leave it off for a few seconds, turn it back on, put everything in, and update that board. And then go try your heat, and it works. It's just because it didn't have any blower speeds in there for that, okay? But I would recommend if you're putting any of this equipment in, since we've had a lot of updates, just update the board. You may not remember this today, but first time you call me, we walk through it on the phone, and we do it one time on the phone, then next time you'll be like, oh, I got this. And it don't take no time. It really doesn't take any time to do. 2 minutes at the most. It's really simple to do. Okay? So today we talked about installation and setup, diagnostics, service and repair, our QR codes, internet connection, whether you need it or Bluetooth. We talked about the LED blinking and solid lights. No memory cards anymore, right? We're all Bluetooth set up. Diagnostics with the EcoNet and the app. Service replacement, mid-tier wiring, high-tier thermostat wiring, using the EcoNet, using the app. We kind of went through all of that today, okay? I think I gave everybody my card. If not, get one up here. Does anybody have any questions at all? Jody, you got anything you want to add?
No, sir. Oh, just one. Just go to our app and our videos and start looking there, because I'm putting stuff in almost every.
So we do have an A2L class, and I can't remember where it is. It's in the spring, in January, February for you guys. There's one of the prerequisites to coming to that class is watching those 2 A2L videos that Jody's got in there. That's going to be one of the prerequisites that we ask for you to watch prior to coming to that class. It's going to be a lot of hands-on. This is what you want to do installing this equipment. This is what you don't want to do installing this equipment. This is how you want to charge this equipment going forward with the A2Ls and a bunch of stuff like that to help us going forward with this A2L shift over. Okay?
Yeah, it'll help answer some questions you may have, then it will add some questions that you can bring to the class. Okay? So, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate you coming. Any questions?